Brackets have been busted. Decks have been shattered. Round 1 is in the books. We move on to round 2 of the Goliath Gauntlet. Who will break through to the semifinals and inch closer to being crowned the very first Goliath Gauntlet champion?
Welcome back, everybody, to the Goliath Gauntlet Flesh and Blood Invitational. It's finally time to begin our quarterfinals. That's right. Our field of 16 has been whittled down to 8, and they're now fighting for some serious prize money, of course, and no shortage of bragging rights. On one side, we're dealing with Michael Feng, who overcame pretty intense mirror match here, obviously on that Icelander to advance. He's using a lot of those really tall attack actions, that new spin on Icelander. And of course, his opponent is the winner, Flake, of that caster clash.
Yeah, that would be DMArmada. And again, the more we talk about these players that are not necessarily on the big show and on the big stage of pro tours and callings and such, because they're in front of the camera, they're behind the desk, frankly, for a lot of these major tournaments. But they've got chops, and here's DMArmada, who went ahead against Red Zone Rogue and is now facing Michael Feng. So it's as like you said, we've whittled it down to eight formidable opponents that are going to be clashing here in the quarterfinals, with the one that's going to be crowned at the end of the day. Lots of cash prizes, as well as I think I hear through the grapevine that there's going to be a foiled out champions playmat that we're going to be giving as well. So stay tuned for that as well.
Yeah, can't wait to see how that comes out. And look, if you're Michael Feng, you're feeling pretty good, right? You've previously managed to win in a really quite a close mirror match against the winner of Pro Tour Lille, and now you will go up against a bit of a scary matchup as an Icelander player in Dromai. Let's talk a little bit about this Michael Feng deck list. This is a matchup that I really want to nerd out over because it's changed so much since how it used to be. It's still a tough one for Icelander in general, right? There's a bunch of reasons for that. Going over the deck list here, crucially, a lot of these large attack actions resemble poppers for a lot of these phantasm-based attacks. So the Icelander has those defensive options outside of just, C and maybe she used to run a Raise Face. Now, obviously, Wounded Bull, Finals Fighting Spirit can blow up those dragons, trigger that Phantasm. What's a little challenging for Icelander is that her weapon doesn't target allies, right? It only targets an opponent. So trying to whittle down a board of dragons is really prohibitive for an Icelander player in general, Flake. It can be really tough to handle that. Now, yeah, there's like a Singleton Scour in the sideboard, presumably could be used for Burn Them All, if that was even going to be a factor in this matchup, which, spoilers, it's not. There's 3 of DMArmada's deck, but I don't know how impactful it's going to be. Really tough for the Icelander player still to win, but I guess extra density of poppers maybe makes it feel better than it used to be.
Yeah, well, again, it's kind of an extra layer of, the evolution of this deck finding benefit in these cards, because originally the way Icelander used to be built was all disruption, all arcane damage, and now since Michael Hamilton has kind of turned it upside down and added these attack actions purely from an aggression standpoint, having them in your back pocket and in your main board already provides you with an option where you don't have to side in those cards to counter a particular strategy. They're already part and parcel of the main framework of what the deck wants to do. So a little added benefit for running Finals Fighting Spirit, Wounded Bull, and such. So you've got 6 of these bad boys that are going to be looking to fight off those dragons, but DMArmada's got more than 6 dragons.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at that deck list now. What I like about this list for DMArmada is that we have a lot of those sort of pretty powerful 0-for-4 attack actions. Ravenous Rabble is often a 0-for-4 in this deck. Blaze Headlong or Blazing Hedgehog there, another 0-for-4 that is really easy to meet the condition of, obviously just playing another red card. And Dust Up, not used by every Dromai player, is a 0-for-4, creating an Ash token and transforming an Ash into an Aether Ashwing.
Yeah, the value of Dust Up is something that was actually put in front of my face by Matt Rogers at Pro Tour Lille when he was discussing just, the progression of thought and logic behind the draft and the value of a card that does so much like Dust Up. It blocks for 3, it goes past that break point at 4 attack, it costs nothing, and on hit, it does work. So those are very, very important cards as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested to see how much we get to see that from DMArmada. There's a ton of really weird interactions in this matchup. The Icelander player, if they're able to destroy a dragon with arcane damage from Arsenal before the attack resolves, can effectively end the turn for the Dromai player, because they cannot get go again if their attacking dragon gets popped, for example, like by a frosting out of Arsenal. That's one method that the Icelander player can use to stop these turns, and Channel Lake Frigid is a card that will force a Dromai player to pay for every dragon to attack. Icelander needs to make sure they're not overwhelmed by Dromai and all these dragons very quickly, and stopping the turn of the Dromai player in their tracks is a huge part of that. So keep an eye out for that, as Michael Feng is really going to have to keep this horde of dragons at bay, and DMArmada is going to want to try and scale as quickly as possible. And I mean that pun in every sense of the word. Let's jump into the game now. It's going to be Michael Feng going up against DMArmada. It's Icelander versus Dromai. A really fascinating head-to-head that promises to be a potentially lengthy match.
Everything about this match is leaning towards a long haul scenario here. It's a sit back and just watch, because both players are going to be playing very unique styles, as Icelander is going to be looking to play within the margins to really disrupt as well as do damage, whereas DMArmada is going to be trying to just create a board state that eventually, just is this avalanche of dragons that you cannot tread water over. And DMArmada also is going to have the benefit of the Ashwings, which will have their own arcane barrier. So the equipment that DMArmada is going to bring to the board here, it doesn't necessarily have to pack its own arcane barrier when you've got the likes of the Ashwings themselves, which are going to be doing a lot of that work.
This is such a great point. Something that's so overlooked about the Ether Ashwing token. All have that inbuilt arcane barrier 1. Normally, Dromai takes AB1 into this matchup, and we see the Null Room gloves here, so wouldn't be surprised to see that. DMArmada going to open up with Spears of Surreality. Again, a 1-for-5 go-again attack with Phantasm. Pretty decent way to start proceedings off here.
Well, DMArmada probably knows what this list looks like. There's no secrets about this list ever since it won U.S. Nationals. There's no surprises left in terms of how many poppers are in there. So presenting something early to perhaps fish it out and say, hey, this has Phantasm. If this is what you want to use on it, by all means, knowing full well that all the dragons will have Phantasm, as well as certain big attacks like Ember Moss Senpai, an 8-spot. So presenting a 5 go again is kind of just saying, I kind of win either way here. Either you take the damage, give me cards, or you pop it. I'm happy with any of those outcomes.
Blizzard comes out here from Michael Feng saying, if you want this go again packed onto the card of Spears of Surreality, you're going to pay for it. You're going to have to pay 2. And then, of course, Icelander creating a Frostbite token as that Blizzard comes down. It's an instant, bear in mind. Doesn't have to come from Arsenal here. It can come straight out the hand. So for DMArmada, if he wants to actually maintain an Arsenal card going into his next turn, there's not a great reason for him to force any more action here.
5 go again, still in the stack. Frostbite resolving here. The Blizzard taxing DMArmada of 2 potential resources. The question is, has he done it? Feng just showing here saying, all right, I've got an Emeritus Scolding. I've got a Brothers in Arms. It looks like a block is going to be made here. No damage leaks through. And I think Armada just said I was content to say, that's fine. I won't pay, but I've got some cards out of you. And we'll just pack an Arsenal and Michael Feng drawing up.
Yeah, Armada saying, okay, well, I'll force the Blizzard out of my opponent. I was able to create an Ash token as well here because I'm obviously pitching a red to place Spears of Surreality. So that's that Dromai ability coming into play. And it feels good to be able to establish some form of board state, even if it's not in the form of a dragon or even an Aether Ashwing. Now is Michael Feng going to be playing out this Frost Hex. Again, for the long game, it's going to be crucial. Armada, just to be clear here, there's only one Frost Hex in play. Armada just making sure that's represented on his side of the board, so he's reminded of its existence in this webcam game. And Feng says, okay, I'll set mine to the side. Armada prepared for everything.
Yeah, this is a callback to the Red Zone Rogue match where he was threatening Kyloria, and he already had his own Teklo Pounder that he was completely prepared to just yoink. He said, no, I got my own. Don't worry about it. And he's got quite the collection. And starting off his turn here with a sweeping blow red, this is how you want to begin those turns, especially if your goal here is to not just generate Ash, but also start the potential procedure of creating and invoking those dragons, the red with Go Again is the perfect opener, as based on the Sands of Sandikar, sorry, the what is it called?
Storm of Sandikai.
Silken Form? No, it's what is it? Did I say it
The
right?
weapon? Storm of Sandikai.
Storm of Sandikai. That's it. I apologize. So Storm of Sandikai needs the red, to allow, or the dragons need red to allow the Go Again. Dromai, that's kind of the prime criteria here, much like I'm losing my train of thought here. I need to pace myself because I have a feeling this game's going to go the distance. Long story short, Uber, Sweeping Blow, pretty good start.
Yeah, Armada needs to play a red card to allow his dragons to have Go Again on that turn. He's pitched and invoked Dracona Optimida to sort of have the Sweeping Blow, which is great because he gets an Ash for pitching, and then he gets an Ash, obviously, for the Sweeping Blow coming in. And remember, he'll also get Ashes if he has to pay costs to get rid of Frostbites. So a lot of his stuff might be 0 for 4. If those become 1 for 4s, there's still some upside there for Armada because he's able to pitch for it like he's doing now, by the looks of things. So pitching to Flamescale Furnace, if I'm not mistaken. Now, the Frostbite, yeah, so should trigger off that, if I'm not mistaken.
One of the hardest things for a Dromai player to do is manage and be patient with their Ash economy. Oftentimes, you're going to see the main word of choice is you may do X, Y, Z. And oftentimes, they're going to leave Ash on the table instead of transforming it here. But bringing in a Kyloria is a good start here, as, again, we're going to have to charge the Ash and just get rid of one to bring in this big dragon, and Michael Feng only has 6 poppers floating around, so he's going to have to be very economical in terms of how he wants to use them. It looks like he's going to go ahead and do it right off the bat.
Wounded Bull will pop that Kyloria. I just want to point out very quickly, Flamescale Furnace was activated at instant speed, probably to try and get around the Frostbite. So just bear that in mind. There's 2 Frost Hexes, by the way, on Armada's side of the field. That's obviously the second one causing that Frostbite to have appeared. So pretty sweet for Michael Feng to already have 2 Frost Hexes on his opponent's side of the field. Again, Armada can stave off a lot of the damage that would come from the exploration of those Frostbites if he can get enough of those Ether Ash Wings and enough Arcane Barrier on board as a result of their creation. Ravenous Rabble reveals a blue off the top, though, so it's only coming in for 0 for 2 and Go Again.
Okay, so this is where I was going to go for, and I want to discuss a little bit about the blue dilution in Armada's deck here, being that there's only 9 of them floating around. I made a point earlier about how the Ashwings are going to have Arcane Barrier. That's going to help you against the arcane damage that Icelander's going to be tossing your way. But if you only have 9 blues floating around, it's going to be very difficult for you to pitch in order to absorb and actually make use of the arcane barrier. In this case, the Ravenous Rabble really getting kind of screwed by the blue, even though there's only 9 of them floating around. Ravenous Rabble is usually almost a sure thing for 4. And in this case, Michael Feng is just going to go ahead and toss the Crown of Providence. That's a nice clean block there.
Yeah, it feels really good to get a full block with that Crown of Providence, right? Especially if Michael Feng is on a particular turn where he has interest in replacing a card from his hand, filtering a little bit more, or even doing away with that arsenal. Looks like the latter, not the case, because Michael doesn't want to send his arsenal card away and then draw a card. He needs an arsenal card to be able to act on DMArmada's turn here. So we have the Ravenous Rebel followed up by the Invoke Asvalai. And again, this is a dragon that, when it comes in, can also deal arcane damage. So when Asvalai attacks, you can have it deal 1 arcane damage to up to any 2 targets. So it's 2 damage from the dragon, 1 arcane on top.
Nice way to just split it up. Again, Asvalai in the mirror, very useful to go ahead and just pick off some of those allies. Unfortunately, for Armada, he's going to basically leave 1 on the table, but still, just attacking is going to go ahead and tickle Michael Feng's life total just a bit here. And again, there's not many opportunities for Michael Feng to actually defend some of these dragons. He's going to have to pick and choose what the important dragons are to throw the poppers at. Again, having only 6. So how, in that case, do you deal with dragons? Well, you're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way and actually kill them with arcane damage. But the ones that have those big, tall asses, those dragons like, Asvalai is going to be 3. So that's digestible. You can kill that in a myriad of ways. But what about something like, I don't know. Well, there's some other big boys out there, right? Like, Dominia is 4. That's not easy. Dracona Optimi is 6. There's a lot of them out there, and Asvalai is 3. So that's an easy one, but you got to kill them in a certain way, and that's what Michael Feng is doing here.
Okay, now bear in mind, every time Michael Feng's putting one of these 7 power attacks in front of one of these dragons, he's denying himself the ability to use those to actually pressure DMArmada's life total on the way back. So there is there's a cost to doing this. Yes, it shuts down the turn, but again, you don't want to feel like you're throwing away these large attack actions frivolously. The reality is, though, that Dromai defends quite well. Once she establishes a board presence, she can use cards from her hand quite happily to block attacks coming her way and still threaten, even with a one-card hand because of what she's already been able to establish there. So Michael Feng here opting for a scar for a scar on his own turn. So this has that go again built in. It's 0 for 4.
Classic card over there is Michael Feng at 37, based off of the defense with the Feindel's Fighting Spirit. Before go again, when you already start the game at a lesser life total, scar for a scar is just always online, especially against a 40 health hero like Dromai here. So this is a card, again, it's just an aggro staple, but it's so fitting for the wizard package, especially when you're throwing in some attack actions. And again, Michael Feng, we bless you, son, for that go again, just to keep everybody on the same page here. 4 go again on the hook. DMArmada full life total here, 3 Ash and an Arsenal. So both players looking mighty healthy here.
All right, so Skittering Sands coming out here, presumably to answer this in a block. It's only a 2-block card, to be fair. It's going to eat up some of that scar for scar. Bear in mind, Feng's at 37 because he defended with Feindel's Fighting Spirit. When you attack or defend with that card, it'll gain you a life if you have less life than your opponent. So, DMArmada flips a red. That is obviously, it's a Marvel Dragon, but it is a red. The Invocation is considered a red card. So this is a Ravenous Rebel coming across for its intended value in this Dromai list. It's a nice little 0 for 4 with go again.
That's a dangerous dragon he revealed. That was Miragai, and it's dangerous in 2 ways. Number one, it's the game text of the matter, which is that the first dragon attack each turn loses Phantasm. It's kind of like having your very own Passing Mirage on the board that can attack as well. And the other part of this is that it is a 4 but it's got 4 health on that dragon. So you're going to need something a little bit more powerful in order to just, kill it, because that Armada is smart enough that he's going to basically tailor his dragon attacks to protect the important ones against Phantasm with that Miragai on the board. And otherwise, how are you going to kill everything else? So it's going to be tough. But the starting here is that, DMArmada was met with a 4 go again and is responding with one of his own with that Ravenous Rabble.
Michael Feng here, really incentivized to preserve his life total. He's been able to apply 2 Frost Hexes already to DMArmada. So, a key component of that late game setup already very much underway. Michael now needs to buy himself the time to actually start to, apply these thumb screws to DMArmada if possible. But this Dromai will be presenting a lot of these pretty efficient attacks. And you make a great point about, if we see Miragai, that 4 health is a break point also for Icelander, because she has to Emeritus Scolding the dragon, or use potentially multiple spells in order to try and take it down if it can't be popped. Again, its onboard ability says that first dragon attack doesn't have Phantasm. So it's a particularly frustrating thing for Feng to deal with, and can't see him being inclined to use one of his large attack actions on his own turn to try and pop it. But speaking of large attack actions, here's an Embermore Centipede. It's a 2-cost, 8 power attack with Phantasm.
Oh, this is a draft all-star. You see this, I scoop this every single time.
It's dirty.
It's filthy. I mean, the value on it, let's be real here, an 8 for 2. And like you said, in limited in this format, those poppers are few and far between. Outside of the Majestics like Thaw and sorry, what's the other? Erase Face. Yeah. Erase Face, yeah. You're basically going to be hunting and fighting for those other 6-cost cards, the Red Brothers in Arms, for example, or any of those cards that actually are able to pop this the old-fashioned way. In the rare slot, you might find the Feindel's Fighting Spirit, but this is not limited. This is constructed, and DMArmada knows precisely what Michael Feng is hanging on to in terms of ways to pop Phantasm. He's seen 2 of them gone. So 33% of Michael Feng's defense against Phantasm is already used up. And an 8 spot is a great time and for an economical defense. But Michael Feng might not have them. He's only got 4 left. And at a certain point, you got to sort of evaluate, Uber. Is it better to use a Phantasm to protect 8 points of life, or is it better to actually just peel a dragon off the board. So lots of difficult decisions here for Michael Feng, and ultimately I think that there might be a situation here where he's going to devote some cards and just kind of play the way that Icelander does, which is, poke here, poke there, frostbite, and see you next round.
And what's not pictured here for DMArmada is actually his legs, his equipment. He's using Phantasmal Footsteps, which says that the first time an illusionist attack action card you control is destroyed each turn, he can pay 1 and you get that action point back. So you're blowing up a dragon while Feng's on defense can end Armada's turn. Using a Phantasm popper on Embermore Centipede won't necessarily end DMArmada's turn because he has 1 floating, looks like he has a card sitting in the arsenal. Feng says, okay, so this is 8 damage. It's coming in decidedly above rate. Okay, he is actually going to defend with a popper here. So using that 7 power Final's Fighting Spirit, also Michael Feng gaining himself 1 life from defending with that card. And Phantasmal Footsteps is being activated here. So Armada is paying that 1 resource to get an action point back.
Those cards, baby. I'm telling you, Phantasmal Footsteps were one of those legendaries that were so integral to certain heroes in there and what they're meant to do. And now Dromai is kind of,
you can say Prism. It's not a swear word, although it should be.
Well, as a Prism main for quite a while, Prism was really the first hero that I actually kind of quote unquote went to school for and put in the time with some really good players.
Mack School of Hard Knocks.
The Dalen Mack School of no. What are you doing? That's the Dalen Mack School. But I put in a lot of work with Dalen. Dalen really put me through a grinder, and the result of it was top 8ing a lot of pro quests with Prism in places like Harry Tarantula, where big names like Isaac Crute are constantly lurking to just ruin your day. So Phantasmal Footsteps, still a coveted card. It may have dropped in value like monetarily, but illusionists know that there is no more comfy footwear than Phantasmal Footsteps.
It's actually one of the sickest equipment pieces in the game. I love it. And I traded a cold foil Crown of Providence in order to get a pair back when they were more expensive. And I still don't feel bad about it, to be honest. Maybe it's because I opened another Crown of Providence, but glad to own those.
Must be nice.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
Very lucky I was. I actually opened it out of a prize pack from winning an armory in Brisbane, Australia.
What is this?
I stayed there for a few weeks.
There is some sort of weird voodoo going on where everybody I've ever seen talk about their prize packs, like, oh, I got 1 prize pack that I found like under a shopping
I deserved
cart.
it. I won an armory with Dorinthia. I deserve a nice prize pack because I'm doing the Lord of Solana's work. You know what I mean? The spirit of Irina is living inside me, and I'm carrying out her will on the battlefield. I don't want to hear it. I'm playing Dorinthia. I'm getting it done. Here's a dust up. You know that? It's also getting it done. This is 0 for 4.
Are you done? Are you done? Why don't you dust off before we dust up over here? It's a 4 for 0 again. That wonderful little package. You play 4 attack, it costs you nothing. A lot of heroes in various different previous metas have really kind of went to the bank on exactly that kind of that beautiful little marriage of statistics and gameplay and game text. And in this case, again, dust up going above rate in terms of what it can do. Matt Rogers in Lille mentioning that he highly prioritized dust ups because in certain junctures where if you're playing against something like a Phi and all you have to do is block, being able to just jam a card with a detrimental effect like that demands an answer to a degree is a very, very good way to just play that 1 card out of your hand and preserve life. And in this case, DMArmada has really put the pressure on Michael Feng here. We need to remember that this turn began with a 4 go again Ravenous Rabble into an 8 attack Ember Moss Centipede, and now there's a 4 on top of it. So DMArmada has really packaged together a vicious turn of 16 damage with an on-hit effect at the end of the chain here.
And just a little side note, Embermore Centipede creates an Ash token when it's destroyed. So DMArmada still net gains some sort of resource as a result of that even being blown up. Obviously, he spends, on the Phantasmal Footsteps to get that action point back. But this is, by Dromai standards, this is a pretty bloody relentless turn. And again, there's more, like you talked about, Dust Up being like a kind of above rate card, because when it hits, not only does Armada get an Ash token, he gets an Aether Ashwing. So his overall Ash count doesn't reduce. And then he has a little 1/1 on the board that he can start prodding with. That also has Arcane Barrier 1. You see it's being developed here. Obviously, nothing but the swaggy Marvel Aether Ashwing here for DMArmada coming in. Love to see that.
Gorgeous card, absolutely. I pulled one of these, immediately sold it to Fluke from Fluke and Bucks. So just snap sold it right away. Ultimately, though, it's a pretty card. I haven't delivered it yet. I'm going to be giving it to him at Worlds. So it is legitimately sitting right next to me. I'll show it to you after this match if necessary. It's not mine. I am merely hanging on to it, but they're gorgeous cards. And again, I did not know that Ember Moss Senpai drops an Ash token. We had it blown up. There's so many armories and rounds of nationals that I need to go back and think about, because the amount of times my Ember Moss Senpai gets blown up and I just let it go without Ash, I feel like there's some bad news here. But hey, this is a different story here, as Michael Feng no longer on the defensive. He's throwing a wounded bull towards DMArmada. And again, those valuable Phantasm poppers, Michael Feng deciding that perhaps it's time to get aggressive.
And yeah, I mean, obviously the Dromaya player wants to keep a pretty healthy grip of cards if possible. Not a lot of board presence established here. It's an equipment block with that Flame Scale Furnace, which blocks for 2. And then a 3-block thrown in front. Okay, this card is absolutely filthy in this matchup. Themai getting invoked. Themai is 3 attack and has 4 health. It says, prepare yourselves, opponents can't play cards or activate abilities during your turn. This is the Wizard Killer.
This is absolutely the wizard. This is the antidote to all wizardly potions, is frankly, it's going to sit on the board. And as you can see here, Armada is just not only showing off the fact that, hey, this is a marvel, but he's also showing off the fact that, hey, I'm in control now. And everything you do is going to be above level. It's going to be on the books, and there's going to be no tomfoolery for me to have to basically take into account when I'm doing my stuff. No tricks up your sleeve when Themai is just sitting there. And you can see just kind of like this overlording sentinel, just making sure that everybody is law-abiding, as Michael Feng on Icelander likes to bend the rules when you're playing at instant speed. And in this case, I believe he's just waiting and letting Michael Feng respond to it, which this might be the last time Michael Feng gets an opportunity to do so. Now, the other end here is, you mentioned this earlier, all of those attacks that were popping Phantasm on dragons are attacks that are no longer sent towards DMArmada's way. These dragons don't just represent threats, they represent life gain to a degree. It's almost like extra health, as a lot of the attacks that Armada would otherwise be absorbing are being directed at these dragons.
Absolutely. Or at least it represents cards that Armada can now hold on to instead of protecting his life total, which again, effectively.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong, and that's part of like the silver lining when I would play as Dromai Unlimited and my opponent would send big attacks at my dragons. Yeah, I'm pissed off that my dragons are dead, but I get to keep my hand and my life total so that I can continue the pressure. So dragons in themselves, yeah, they're pretty, they're nasty, but they're kind of like this. I don't want to say draconic human shield. Like, does that make sense to you? You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
You wear them as armor, like, is what you do at a certain point. You just hide behind them and let the slings and arrows come their way.
Now, Michael Feng, so Themai hasn't resolved it. Michael Feng is trying to figure out, do I take my only opportunity now to play this Arsenal card, or do I allow Themai to resolve, effectively locking me out of my opponent's turn? And that's just okay. I mean, dude, here's another Marvel dropping. You can tell us about this one. We kind of foreshadowed Miragai appearing already. And already Armada's into the attack, so better be quick, Flag.
Yeah, well, there's a Themai coming in. It's a 3 attack. And again, Michael Feng is basically handcuffed over here. He's only going to be out on parole on his own turn to do his own, his own clapback. That arsenal is useless, as basically Themai says, no. He pulls a Dalen Mack, actually. He goes, no. You play on your turn and do it a different way. But again, the fact that he's also invoked a Miragai protecting the Phantasm. And smartly, I said this earlier, DMArmada is not going to put the important dragons in harm's way. I would actually be surprised if he doesn't even attack with Miragai, because that is too valuable of a dragon. So keep that in mind as well. He might go after Themai, he might go Ashwing and then pass.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's only the first dragon attack which loses Phantasm. So following this attack up with Miragai, for example, would expose it to potentially, facing a 6+ power attack from Michael Feng on defense, blowing it up. It doesn't mean that Armada has to play a little bit cagier, a little bit slower. I want to make something clear. when it passes back to Michael Feng and he has his turn, if he chooses to spend that turn blowing up Themi, trying to find 4 damage from God knows where to take that dragon out of the picture, that represents a colossal tempo loss for him. Spending so long trying to get rid of that onboard piece that would be devastating. So it looks like Channel Lake Frigid probably blocking the Themi here, and then an Aether Ashwing just coming in for 1. Again, if that does get popped, it's not the end of the world. It's not worth Michael Feng spending a 6 or more power attack on trying to blow up a 1-1.
And there you go. He just passes, just protecting the mirror guy. So I'm looking right now at the options that Michael Feng has in order to kill the Themi. Obviously, there's Scar for a Scar. I mean, that can open up and allows you to go do some other things. There's the other attack actions as well, and Light and Strike, Wounded Bull, Fyendal's Fighting Spirit, and that's what he's going to do. So there it is. Wounded Bull going above rate, but there is no trample damage, as it were. There's no breakthrough. There's no overrun.
Right. That is, it barely it feels above rate. That's 3 for effectively 4 damage. If I'm honest with you, just getting rid of the Themi there, because you're right. There's no overflow. Doesn't feel good, but Themi has to go if Michael wants to have any chance of, adhering to Icelander's overarching game plan. He needs to be able to act on Armada's turn because he needs to be able to effectively end Armada's turn with some form of disruption. Otherwise, the board keeps getting developed. Pressure keeps mounting, and Feng will have less and less windows to try and throw a spanner into those works.
DMArmada still has 2 dragons on the board. One is just an Ashwing token, but it's a Marvel Ashwing token. And there's Kyloria, again, Marvel style, loving it as DMArmada, not just showing that he's controlling the board, but he's got, like the dragons, a hoard of treasures that he's very happy to show off over here, as he's going to go ahead and also drop down a Hypothermia too. But that is a Hypothermia being played from Michael Feng. It just seems like DMArmada took a look. Yeah, well, he looked at the deck list and said, all right, what is the stuff that I'm going to have on my board? And good for Armada, again, just an absolute, treasure of a human being himself within the FAB community, and just making sure that it's a very clean and wonderful layout that he's got on his side of the board.
Like, Armada's threatening to steal the Amulet of Ice. When Kyloria attacks, it will steal an item if able. If not, it will draw. It's a snatch on a stick in that sense. But Michael Feng spent his arsenal card on developing this Amulet of Ice in order to hopefully in the future disrupt DMArmada's hand by inflicting another discard unless you pay 2 effect. Kyloria says, that Amulet of Ice is going to belong to me. And no, I'm not going to be able to Ice Fuse in order to satisfy its condition. But you better believe I'm going to deny that from you.
Sometimes there's so much crap on my shelves, Uber, that it doesn't matter whether it has use or not. It just looks cool sitting there. And that's what DMArmada is saying. Trust me, I have so many pop vinyl garbage things that are hanging around over here. And just taking a look. Why the hell do I have Third Rock from the Sun on DVD still on my shelf? Do I ever watch it? No. Is it an excellent show? Sure. But it's a whole bunch of garbage that I do not have I have no use for it. I don't even have a DVD player. But take a look at this. Again, this is where it's going to get out of hand as Michael Feng is staring down this massive horde of dragons, Ashwings. Armada is just laying it on thick here.
So that was a Rake the Embers, if I'm not mistaken, by DMArmada coming out here. So that is going to allow him, obviously, to create a very large number of Aether Ashwings. He's also representing an attack here with Kyloria. And yeah, he's stealing the Amulet of Ice. That is absolutely diabolical.
Oh, look, the collection of nonsense that Armada is picking up here. He probably didn't even think you would ever go ahead and clip one of those ice amulets. As he's probably digging into his boxes right now, saying, "Well, you know what? We know I have it. So get lost." Kyloria doing work here as the amulet of ice is kind of just in no man's land here, but it belongs to Kyloria and his master DMArmada. So at the moment here, DMArmada just collecting things. Another ice amulet. Michael Feng says, okay, now we can have, it's like friendship bracelets. We each have one.
Now, I just want to point out that Hypothermia says to DMArmada that attacks he controls can't gain go again. But Rake the Embers wasn't an attack. So he's able to create the Aether Ashwings and attack with Kyloria despite being afflicted by that Hypothermia, which, if I'm not mistaken, by now probably should no longer be there. But that's fine. That'll get cleaned up in a moment. Armada's play area is definitely getting pretty, as Aussies like to say, chock-a-block. It's going to be an Insidious chill here and an Amulet of Ice. So Michael Feng still undeterred in deploying this architecture to disrupt DMArmada's hand. Absolutely playing for the late game. But from here on out, Flake, Feng has to basically stop DMArmada's turns as soon as humanly possible. Otherwise, he's taking a ton of extra damage from these Aether Ashwings. Kylori is stealing items or drawing cards. And Miragai is removing Phantasm from that first attacking dragon. This is a very scary prospects for Michael Feng to deal with, and he needs to find ways to keep this horde at bay from here on out.
Well, as us Canadians like to say, Armada's about to show him what these dragons are all about, and he is going to just go ahead and send them full force as they're kind of just hovering in the air now. There's a stack of Ashwings. It's not just a solo Ashwing that's just hanging out there as far as I can tell. I think there's 3 of them that he got from that Rake the Embers, and again, they all pack Arcane Barrier. And, you know, your Armada here, you're like, all right, cool, Insidious Chill, whatever. Frost Hex, who the hell cares? At this moment, all I need really is just to play defensively and chip away and chip away. As long as Miragai's on the board, chip away, chip away. I can send a dragon at you every turn if necessary. I think what Armada is looking for right now is perhaps one of his big boy dragons, so that if the game does create sort of get to a juncture where you can only send one dragon, you want to make it count off the back of Miragai's protection here. But there it is, 4 Ashwings as Armada hurt us through space and time and fanning them out. There's 4 Ashwings on the board and a pair of Marvel Dragons.
Yeah, so that's a lot of damage. That represents 10 damage on board just from dragons alone. Now, DMArmada might be looking to test the waters by opening up either with, you know, a Phantasm protected dragon, right? Like Kyloria via Miragai's effect. And then maybe follow up with Aether Ashwings attacking so you don't lose a whole big old dragon. But this is really scary. So not only is there 10 damage on board with effects, there's a Ravenous Rabble topping another blue, which hurts a little bit. But for DMArmada, you feel like he's playing with house money a little bit here. Getting to go now, getting 2 damage. Yeah, it's not great. But it's still damage that, you know, has to be answered, that has consequences, especially later in the game if it gets through.
Yeah, you can't have it, you know, your way. This isn't Burger King, right? It's you peel a blue off the top. You can't basically have it. Yeah, so no blocks off the 2. Michael Feng here actually has just, you know, kind of won the lottery twice when it comes to the Ravenous Rabbles, as there's been 2 blues that have been peeled off the top of them. I think that's all 3 of the Ravenous Rabbles gone now. But
yeah, one got 4 damage at least, but the other 2, yeah, got sufficiently cut down to size.
Yeah, as basically Michael Feng blocking with the shuffler in this case is 4 damage off the Ravenous Rabble peels were essentially absorbed by RNG, and in this case, still lots of damage being sent Michael Feng's way. And we know that, you know, Icelander does play defensively, does kind of pick and choose her spots here, but it seems like the longer the game goes, Armada is just going to continuously create this fleet of dragons. And they all do some pretty nasty stuff. You know, there's very few of the dragons that are on there that, you know, like, how do you prioritize? Well, is it Miragai? Is it Kyloria? What's the
priority right now is fusing for Michael Feng. Right now, he needs to fuse with a card from his arsenal. Otherwise, he's going to lose that Amulet of Ice and its potential effect. So he's being forced now to maybe pop that, to try and find a way to fuse and pop that amulet before he would otherwise like to. In fairness, a fusion. Okay, there's no fusion here, right? So he's going to try. He's going for the Kyloria, and this is something that we sort of touched on a little bit earlier. Kyloria doesn't have Phantasm, but Michael Feng is targeting it with this spell. This is an Ice Bolt that represents 3 arcane damage. Now, presumably, it's heading in the direction of Kyloria, which only has 2 health. So while it may not have Phantasm, it can still be felled as it's attacking. And if it dies while it's trying to attack, DMArmada cannot get go again.
Kyloria now dead, and the threat of not just the on hits and the fact that it's a 4 attack dragon, but stealing those ice amulets that, you know, Armada has no use for. They would basically collect dust on his mantle, but for Michael Feng, they're integral to part of that hand denial strategy, the fusion strategy, in conjunction with cards like, you know, Aether Ice Vein, obviously Insidious Chill sitting there as well. You can really pick and choose how you want to just absolutely devastate an opponent's hand. But one of those ice amulets is already under Armada's possession, but Kyloria, the transgressor, the thief in that case, is now put out to pasture. It's been ice bolted out of the sky. Michael Feng is kind of slowly chipping away at the dragon horde, but Armada with 4 Ashwings and a Miragai is in a good spot here.
And don't forget, there are multiple Frost Hexes in play. So DMArmada took 5 damage at the end of that turn. 2 from a Frostbite expiring on his side of the field because he had no action point. He had no way of getting rid of it. And then 3 from that Waning Moon. So even just a single Frostbite from Michael Feng per turn can still represent a frustrating amount of damage. And if he's able to keep deploying these wizard non-attack actions from his arsenal and blowing up an attacking dragon, denying DMArmada any way to get that action point back, he can stabilize. He can continue to tread water. It is a significant challenge, though. Here's an Enlightened Strike, which makes plenty of sense for Michael to use offensively, Flag, as it's not a 6-power attack. It can get buffed up to 7, but on print, it's a 5.
So he's going for the 7 attack, and I believe that he wants to just go ahead and score as much damage points as possible here. The Mirror Guy, perhaps not as big of a threat right now. Obviously, he's looking to perhaps just either get some cards out of Armada's hand, just kind of weighing down what the clapback could potentially be, or just chip away. Armada at 23 looks a lot more reasonable and digestible at this juncture in the game than Armada at 30. He's going to use the sand cover here.
Now, so sand cover basically says target Ash you control gains ward 4 until end of turn. And that means if you would take damage, instead destroy this Ash token and prevent 4 of it. Now, Michael Feng could, at instant speed, Waning Moon DMArmada to eat up that ward 4 and be able to get all 7 damage across. But he doesn't want to do that. He opts to keep the Arsenal card. But that's like a little trick you can do in the Icelander matchup, is quickly at instant speed, let the ward 4 resolve and then hit them with a Waning Moon so your attack can get through. It's a bit expensive, a bit flashy. Feng decides not to go that way. And here is a big ass dragon hitting the battlefield, Flake.
Tumultai in Marvel form. Now, I just want to rewind real quickly. The Waning Moon play there was kind of not
he
on
has
the
to play
board.
a non-attack action. That's
correct. Right. And so he was kind of up against it here as DMArmada saying, it's a Marvel Tumultai. Just in case you're paying attention at home, we've got a very shiny card over here. That one is nasty because that attacks your equipment base. Tumultai is not only a 5/5, it's pretty nasty. But when it attacks, you reveal the top 2 cards of your deck. If one or more of them are revealed one or more red cards are revealed this way, put that many -1 counters on equipment they control. Then if it has 0, you blow it up. So this isn't an on hit. This is a attack trigger. So it doesn't need to connect. As soon as you present the attack, you get the benefit here. And Tumultai is a beast.
This is very scary for Michael Feng. Losing his Storm Striders to Tumultai would be absolutely devastating.
Okay, so out of Arsenal now, that is a red Aether Ice Vein. It's going to be fused. You got to pay for it here. You're fusing with the blue Ice Bolt. It's going to be 3 arcane damage with the fusion, meaning that upon hit, you're going to peel cards away, but also Insidious Chill is now online as well. That comes into effect as that initial burst of the Ice Vein is going to topple several dominoes.
And Michael Feng can optionally activate that amulet there, but with only 1 card in his hand, if I'm not mistaken, he's just going to, I guess, pitch to that effect, or rather, pitch to the Flamescale Furnace. It's quite possible here as this comes in, or even Arcane Barrier. Either way, he's gaining benefits for pitching in general. Tumultai, though, was that an attack at Tumultai?
It looks like it was an attack at Tumultai.
Are we going to see a Storm Striders to try and kill this? Yes! Feng has to use the Storm Striders now to deploy another non-attack from his hand. And looks like he's going after Tumultai once more.
No, that's not a bad idea. And we know that their blue Ice Bolt is there. That's the cleanest way that you're probably going to get rid of that, especially since Mirror Guy protecting against Phantasm. Smart move here because there's a good chance that DMArmada was eyeing those boots anyways. So might as well get used to them. Get rid of a dragon. Basically, that's precisely it. It's kind of making the best out of a bad situation. Lemons into lemonade, as Michael Feng here was going to lose the boots anyway, so might as well put them to work here as he stomps out that Tumultai that was just presented and could have honestly just really accelerated the pace of this game.
Yeah, frightening stuff for Michael Feng. If you don't have a popper in your hand, you know this thing is going to come in anyway. Even if you're able to block it with a 6 or more power attack, you're in trouble. So able to deny that action point from DMArmada is pretty huge there, and getting rid of Tumultai. And, yes, losing the equipment, but he's able to make some use of it. Spears of Surreality comes down, though. Again, 1 for 5. Go again. Still going to be something that Michael Feng has to respect, as these life totals are getting walked down turn after turn.
Sigil of Solace is what's pitched here. That might come back late in the game and as some, extra cushion if necessary, and also just a fun way at instant speed to unlock the go again from your dragons. When all else fails, you can just go ahead and play that. I know that I've done that with Sand Cover and Limited, where my opponent thought that I had no go again and decided to let my Ashwing through. And then I was like, oh, I'm just going to blow up an Ash and unlock all of my fun dragons. And they were not happy about that. But Spears of Surreality does have Phantasm, but I have not been keeping track precisely. I believe 4, possibly 5 of the poppers have been used. 3 defensively, I think 1 or possibly 2 offensively. I know that we saw a Wounded Bull tossed at Themai. I don't know if you've been paying attention, Uber, but there's at least 1 more popper floating around, maybe 2. But that's not as many as you want. I mean, in constructed meta, DMArmada on Dromai, if you bump into a Guardian player, none of your dragons are ever living because their entire deck is just filled with Phantasm Poppers. In this case, DMArmada's got to be so happy that he's seen so many of them gone and he's still at a healthy board state and a healthy life total.
Yeah, if I would say there's maybe 1 Findle's Fighting Spirit and 1 Wounded Bull, if that, left in Feng's deck. He doesn't run Command and Conquer like a lot of lists have. So this is instead, I guess, a Sink Below deployed to soak up much of the Spears of Surreality's damage, but some will still leak through. And this is a matchup where leaking damage actually is pretty important. Here comes the fleet of dragons now, as DMArmada's played a red card, so it satisfied the condition that Dromai dictates in order for his dragons to have go again. So Aether Ashwing, number 1 coming in, and Michael Feng, again, needs to ask himself, how do I end my opponent's turn here before this starts to get a little out of hand? Because this is the first dragon attack from DMArmada. This first dragon attack cannot be blown up by a Phantasm Popper. Not that you would want to anyway, but...
Armada is just kind of, mourning the loss of that Tomotai, and it feels like Michael Feng, by killing that Tomotai, really, roused up the beehive here as the swarm has now arisen from its slumber, and here comes the first wave as the Ashwings are going to be buzzing about and annoying Michael Feng, just poke after poke after poke. And, we're starting with 1 and looking at the deck list here. Michael Feng, no respect for Dromai as he's packing no Singes. Singe is such a potent way to deal with Ashwings, and he's not running a single one. But yeah, that's not a bad way either.
Aether Hail comes out, blowing up the dragon, denying the action point, and also meaning that Frostbite probably can't be removed by DMArmada. I think, well, in fairness, the Flamescale Furnace is an instant, so you can pitch to the Flamescale Furnace in order to try and blow up the Frostbite. I think that is possible, but I don't know if that's going to be Armada's plan here. Otherwise, he's taking damage, of course, from the Frost Hexes being in play. My last count is 2 Frost Hexes. But Armada might be saying, okay, I'll let the Frostbite expire and I'll just eat up the Frost Hex damage via pitching to Arcane Barrier.
He's happy doing that. And again, one of the best and easiest jobs in the world, Uber, besides our own, is being a fired professional sports coach where you just garner a salary and sit at home and do whatever the hell you want. Second easiest job, Mirror Guy. Sit there and watch all the other dragons do the work as he is basically just saying, yeah, it's fine. Go for it. Yeah, you're good. You're good. You're fine. You're fine. Don't worry about it. You're good. And that's all it is, because that dragon is never going to be put in harm's way as long as Michael Feng is still holding on to, or as long as there's still a popper floating about. That Mirror Guy sitting pretty right now.
Again, yeah, Feng has to circumvent that by actually just doing enough damage to a dragon to kill it by conventional means, right?
Dune Breaker. I love this. Another 5 go again. It seems like they're just got plenty of those bad boys. 5 go again with Phantasm.
And you know what, Flag? It also creates an Ash token.
Get out of town. Get out of town.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, well, that's, how many?
No Kizzy, my friend.
So many Ash tokens have just evaporated into the ether because I don't read cards, apparently. Because I see 5 go again, or I see 8 for 2, and I just get so excited about that I don't even it doesn't even matter to me.
I like big numbers too. Don't get me wrong, but a little Ash here and there.
8 is
I'm
a
an
big
Ash
number.
man. What can I say? You
I
know?
get it. Jesus. Oh my goodness. This reminds me of US Nats, where I referred to the Dromai player who expended all their ash. I said he is now just an ashless chap. Yeah.
Damn, you actually got value out of retelling that joke because I hadn't heard it and you got a laugh out of me. I don't know if I should feel envious or taken advantage of. Either way, nicely done. Yes. Well, DMArmada, lack of ash, not an issue for this man.
Oh boy, the other term for ash, gadonkadonk, apparently, but it was too long to put on the. Who knows? Maybe when like HP2 comes out, History Pack 2, and they have like the German translation, maybe gadonkadonk is like the German translation for ash. We don't know, but what we do know is that the 5 attack went through. The ash wing is now being presented here, and again, Michael Feng going to have to do some hocus pocus and instant speed to really stop it here. It's been, we've been talking so highly of Armada and how he's been managing his horde of dragons here, but Feng has really done a great job of just curtailing the nastiness and sending the Aether Hails at these dragons to, like you said, just kill them before the go again actually registers.
Yeah, this is extremely patient play from Michael Feng. Expending, obviously, you're paying 1 for this Aether Hail. You get the upside of the Frostbite that has to be answered by DMArmada, and you are slowly starting to make your way through this veritable horde of dragons. Aether Ashwing, again, taken down mid-flight by this Aether Hail. And a Sigil of Solace here for DMArmada, which is obviously going to gain him some of that life.
And he's going
to
pitch
pay through the Frostbite and get an Ash token as a result.
I mean, he just came out on top of that entire transaction as really that Frostbite was originally representing some damage from the Frost Text, but ultimately what Armada said here is like, hold on, not only will I not take damage, I will pitch, gain an Ash, get rid of your Frostbite, and gain 3 life. Suck it, Feng. I added the last part.
Yeah, no, I think a little bit of embellishment there is completely reasonable because, you know, if you want to explore what his internal monologue might be saying, you might be on the right track there. Feeling pretty smug, I would be if I was in DMArmada's position right now. I will say, his horde of dragons starting to get cut down to size a little bit more here. Feng, obviously, I think it came back to him, and he has a turn here, I think, where he may look to just try an Arsenal. I'm not quite sure. Okay, it looks like he... Right, what happens here? Right.
Oh, he just scarred for a scarred. Okay, so he's
just attacking Mirror Guy.
That's the smart move. Again, Mirror Guy just kind of living on easy street for so long there, and like you mentioned, Feng doing a good job and of taking out these dragons. And there's an Aether Ice Vein red, and that's going to get fused. So finally, Feng on the clapback here with 2, like the fusion from the Ice Vein, the Insidious Chill, and the optional amulet.
Right. So Feng's in a position here where we can shut down Armada's turn before it even starts next turn. Maybe he gets to attack with 1 Aether Ashwing, but it probably wouldn't be able to get go again if Armada doesn't have a red card to play. So up front, this is going to be 1 discard unless you pay 2 effect from the Insidious Chill. Then we have the matter of the 5 arcane damage and that same effect baked into Aether Ice Vein's text. So that was a discard from DMArmada in response to the Insidious Chill activation. Now we've got 5 arcane damage rattling across the table. He's taking all of it, and now we'll resolve that discard unless you pay 2 effect here. It's another discard, another Mirror Guy in the bin.
That's a big one to lose as well. Michael Feng is going to be happy that he's that bad boy's out of the way. But again, we haven't really seen many dragons. We've seen a Mirror Guy, a Themai, was it 1, maybe 2 Kylorias potentially, and a Tomultai. That is just the tip of the iceberg, as many of those non-legendary dragons are 3-ofs. They're floating about, taking a look. There's 3 Asvalai, 3 Chromai, a pair of Themais, and you can be damn well sure that he packed both of them. 3 Miragai, 3 Kylorias, plenty of dragons. So many dragons that are still lurking about. And there's the Chromai. And that one, again, talking about just recovering action points, that one does a good job of it. 3 attack being sent Feng's way.
Yeah, crucially, Armada's playing a red card with the invocation. So it satisfies the condition to give his dragons go again. Chromai says, when it attacks or leaves the arena once per turn, you gain an action point. So now any issues of Blizzard or hypothermia stopping this turn in its tracks, less of a concern now. DMArmada doesn't even need go again because he'll have an extra action point to work with after Chromai comes on down. Remember, the Invocation itself has go again. So there's a surplus of action points for DMArmada. Michael Feng, again, even if he shuts down a dragon mid-flight now, that extra action point means that DMArmada's turn is not necessarily over. He can still act after losing a dragon to a spell out of Feng's arsenal during its attack step.
3 still on the hook here. Michael Feng just kind of doing a little bit of accounting over here. Again, it's been such a slow grind for both players as Michael Feng has done his best to just continuously, uh, just get in that gunner seat and start firing at those TIE fighters buzzing about. And really, DMArmada just keeps on coming as they're, some of them are kind of unassuming. Really, Michael Feng's main threat there at a certain point was Tomultai. But Tomultai actually, in retrospect, got the job done. Did exactly what you needed to do. It absorbed damage where necessary, and it got rid of the boots that could have potentially sealed the deal late game. I think the other thing that Michael Feng needs to be very vigilant of is that other Themi and making sure that he has an answer for that other Themi.
Another Themi coming down might be a little too much for Feng to fight through because, again, you lose tempo by having to spend so much of your turn just pummeling it with damage from your arsenal. And you're dead right about the Tomultai. It got rid of the Storm Striders one way or another. So Feng's deciding, okay, what's that? A frosting in arsenal?
Yeah, I believe that's vanilla frosting too. My favorite. Like, don't give me none of this pumpkin spice garbage. I don't want any of that peppermint, trash. Chocolate frosting, even vanilla frosting. It's so good. You can dip cookies in it if necessary. It just hits all the right spots.
I wonder what spot this frosting is going to hit though. This is the kind of card that is basically an Ether Ashwing killer, a turn ender. It would be in the event that Chromai wasn't on the field because it's free for Michael Feng to play out of that arsenal. It's actually going to be a block with the Emeritus Scolding here. So assuming that was a Chromai attack first and foremost, this one gets in front.
So that's the question: is where you're flashing the frosting, and I guess So he went after the Ashwing there.
Yes.
Frosting is still on the stack over here, killing the Ashwing where necessary. I believe there should be. Yep, there's the Frostbite Armada dropping it on the board here, so that's been resolved. And depends on how Michael Feng wants to approach this. I'm not sure how many cards he has left here. But you can always pitch for a Waning Moon to chip away at some of the life total here. But you can probably be sure that if there's an ice card in his hand, that he's going to want to pocket it if it's blue.
Yeah, Feng needs to keep operating from that arsenal here, getting rid of a dragon, plus putting the Frostbite down and making it so DMArmada probably can't do too much more with this turn is best case scenario here. Having a couple of Frost Hexes in play is pretty crucial, and I can only imagine that Michael Feng really wants to get to a position where Frost Hexes are all on Armada's side of the field, and then these Ice Eternals, if he's got any interest in casting those, really start to hurt a lot more, right? Creating a ton of Frostbites, more than you can pay through as Dromai, turning that into massive amounts of damage from the multiplicative effect of multiple Frost Hexes being on his opponent's side of the field. Got a little bit of a Waning Moon action here. Headed DMArmada's way. A little bit of pokey poke. And
we have it. Taking a look at that. It's we're approaching Thanksgiving, and it's 2020 in terms of the health here. And we're even Steven after this entire battle. So Michael Feng hanging tough here. New Kids on the Block style, and DMArmada just doing his best to keep things rolling. And there's the other Themi, Uber. Things are about to get nasty. Michael Feng's going to have a decision to make here.
Yeah, priority window here as the Invocation comes down. Now, I mean, DMArmada, I get it. He's not going to bother to play the flip side of Themi and then flip it over in its sleeve. But important to point out that the Invocation for Themi costs 2. That's why there's a blue being pitched there. And before Themi materializes in that effect of shutting down Michael Feng from doing anything on DMArmada's turn, Feng has an opportunity to try and deploy whatever card is sitting in his arsenal. Now, if it's a card that has a fuse effect, there's a good chance to sort of tear through DMArmada's hand a little bit, but a red card has been played on DMArmada's turn. So he's going to be able to get going. These dragons are going to have go again. That's that one of Scour pitched here to deploy a blue Ether Ice Vein. No fuse.
Okay, well, you're killing the Chromai. That gets you an action point, by the way, just in case. So red, that's a blue. Ice Vein, a pricey way to pay for 3 arcane damage, but again, that is otherwise going to be locked in the vault unless you have an opportunity to kill the Themi in another way. But Themi right now, a 3 attack. It's got that caboose, that four body caboose, which is really, really tough to get rid of. Again, we've seen 2 Scar for Scars be played already. I believe there's only one other attack action. I think 2 Enlightened Strikes have already been played. So really, your opportunities here to kill that Themi are really thin, as you might have to rely on like a red Aether Ice Vein. You might have to rely on one of those E-strikes to come through.
Like that's such a problem, because Aether Ice Vein says you have to deal damage to a hero in order to get that discard unless you pay 2 effect. So you're only getting you're getting a blank card if you're going after a dragon ally with an Aether Ice Vein. That feels so bad, but you might be right. There might have to be Feng's approach to getting rid of it. And things get worse. I mean, now we have the Spears of Surreality to follow it up. So again, another 1-for-5 go again. Feng just says, well, I kind of want to keep these cards. So have actually, the red Rake the Embers is absolutely brutal. There's so many little dragons, many whelps left side Flake. He is going to get himself a whole horde once more.
Yeah, they're buzzing about. Again, you piss off the Hive and they're going to come after you as he's dropping them in. You got the Marvel one. You've got the cold foil one. You've got the standard procedure, the one you get for just showing up. Aether Ashwing. He's got them in droves here. And again, Themi just shutting the door on any kind of, hocus pocus, any of that abracadabra that Michael Feng wants to send his way. There's no rabbits in your hat as long as Themi's there sitting pretty and just watching over, as Michael Feng right now, with no arsenal and a diminished life total, no boots at his disposal either, is really coming up on some dangerous territory as Armada just continues to lay it on thick with that sentinel, that stopgap that you shall not pass, that Themi represents.
I mean, the fact that Feng has not been able to cripple DMArmada before the second Rake the Embers came down is already a pretty bad omen in a matchup like this. Themi is going to be removed here. Michael Feng declares as such, as Scar for a Scar will come out and do that job. Having go again built in is pretty nice, but Feng has nothing else to do with this turn.
Oh, man.
That's disgusting. That is big damage. Another 1-for-5 rattling across.
Does this not get you, excited to play Dromai? I know that I've mentioned this multiple times. There's so many heroes I want to dig into. Rhinar is one of them. I would never waste my time on some garbage like Dorinthia, but ultimately something like
blaspheming. Okay.
A Dromai, though, like when players like DMArmada are at the helm of a hero like Dromai, I know that one of my friends, Aaron Shantz, took Dromai pretty far up there at Canadian Nationals and showed me the deck. Players like that can really do good things with these decks really inspire schmucks like me to actually dig out the cards and build a deck like this. And it's not a hyper expensive deck to build, in my opinion. You're looking at the list, a lot of it is just dragon related. And what the problem is that it's not just about plug and play the list into something like Talishar and then go with it. It's really difficult to play this the proper way. And DMArmada against somebody of Michael Feng's ilk is really showing how good of a player he truly is.
So the Brain Freeze coming out, blocking for 3, means that Feng takes 2 damage from that 1-for-5, the Centipie. And DMArmada here deliberating on what might be his next move, because all he had to do was pitch a Sweeping Sands, I think, to send that one over. Feng getting dangerously low. And also bear in mind, Icelander, one of her biggest strengths is being able to play 2 turns, one after another. Burn them all is honestly a case for Illuvian Constellas to be brought into this matchup. Feng obviously not doing that because he knows much more about the game than I do. But Flake, in the late game, this card is terrifying.
It's nasty, and you do have something like Metacarpus Nodes that can absorb some of that damage. Let me just double check here to make sure that I'm not speaking directly out of my own ass. And yeah, it does still have Arcane Barrier 1. Nothing's changed since I checked the deck list earlier. But that is a way to go ahead and absorb it. But Icelander doesn't want to give up cards. Icelander wants to hang on to that. So it's, again, just insult to injury, as one of those Ashwings is now representing 1+1, and you can best believe that graveyard is plenty healthy with red cards, that burn them all is going to survive for maybe 5 turns.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Burn them all says once a turn, when a dragon you control attacks, it deals 1 arcane damage to each opposing hero. So free arcane damage off that first attack. And again, burn them all. You have to banish a card from
Oh,
your
no.
graveyard for each raise counter. And yikes. Okay. Brain freeze out here.
Another one just waiting in the wings. DMArmada also showing that there was another one in Arsenal over there flashing another brain freeze. Or sorry, that was in his hand, I believe. So he's just showing that that's the 0-cost card, I believe.
Yes.
Brain freeze, easily passable in limited. But what that says is target opponent reveals their hand. If brain freeze was fused with ice, put an action card with cost 0 from their hand on top of their deck. So what Armada's saying here is this is what you caught. This is the fish you hooked, and we're gonna say goodbye to it. I think I could be wrong here.
It doesn't. Brain freeze. Was brain freeze not fused? Maybe it was just for the. It has to be
Maybe.
fused in order to actually put that action card. You can look at their hand if you don't fuse, but you cannot put the card at the top.
Gotcha. So, okay. All right. So that there was no fusion there. So what he did is he got a peek at his own impending,
Yeah.
doom or bad news, essentially. Do you remember that show called Early Edition, where it was about that dude who got tomorrow's newspaper? Do you remember that
Yes.
show?
Yes, I
That's
do.
what brain freeze does. It's
Yeah.
it's like he got tomorrow's newspaper and found out that it sucks. It's gonna rain, and Burn Them All is just gonna
I mean,
absolutely
if he just fused, he would have been able to get rid of that card. But now that first dragon attack will represent 2 arcane damage on top of the 1 or however much it comes in to be from a dragon. And DMArmada not taking his foot off the gas. An absolute relentless assault from this Dromai now. Another 1 for 5. Doombreaker Centipie coming in once more. These are frustratingly prohibitive for Feng to block in their entirety. These are almost always going to be guaranteed to leak some damage, because it's incredibly expensive for Feng to give 2 cards. And remember, if you want to fuse an attack, you're paying for the attack, you have to have the attack itself and the fuse card in hand. You want to keep 3 cards in your hand. So blocking a 5-power attack with 2 cards isn't good, and it definitely signals to your opponent that you are not intending to fuse, at least to fuse a card that has a cost associated with it, like an Aetherized Veins. So Feng has to be aware of what he's telegraphing by how he chooses to block this Centipie. But again, letting this leak 2 damage is not good. That is 20% of his current life.
that jives. I just bought my TI 83 Plus confirms that is correct. That if he goes down to 8 there, that would be 20% gone. Easy peasy. For 1 cost, you're sending 5 with Go Again. Again, the Phantasm, sure, that's a detriment in so many other matchups, but against an Icelander player that has so few of those Phantasm poppers, you feel safe that sending 5 here, even if they do perhaps, I don't know, bust this up, probably have cards that you can pitch in and recover that action point with Phantasmal Footsteps. Keep in mind that card is also a nice safety net. Turns that might go awry. Burn Them All still there. The Aether Ashwing Fleet just hovering and waiting. But that's a nice card to come back with, as one of the best cards from Tales of Aria, Channel Lake Frigid, has finally entered the arena.
Yeah, and it looks like before CLF came down, there was probably a Flamescale Furnace activation, Billowing Mirage pitched to it, and then you gain 2 resources. That happens before the Frostbite hits. Very common response from Dromai to make sure that she's actually not getting taxed that heavily or at all. Flamescale Furnace, incredible in that sense, kind of inoculating you from, having these heavy tolls levied at you. Still an issue, because every attack DMArmada wants to make now costs not only 1 from Channel Lake Frigid, but the first one would be costing 2. So if you want to get in with this Aether Ashwing and maybe threaten that sort of poke of 1 damage plus the 1 arcane from Burn Them All, it's going to cost you 2 pitch in order to do so. And bear in mind, these Burn Them Alls are great, but they cost a lot of fuel, right? You need to banish 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and so on cards from your graveyard to keep that card in play. So Blaze Headlong here, paying 2 for 4, doesn't seem too bad, especially with Michael Feng now going to 5.
No, you're in at the point of the match here where you're just paying. It doesn't matter. Get at it and get there. And I'll pay. I would pay 3 for that 4 damage this point of the match, anyways, because Burn Them All with the Dragon's attack are going to basically kind of shut out what else comes over here. It's 4 with Go Again. I don't know what other resources DMArmada has access to here, but ultimately we're approaching the end game here, as DMArmada has a nice set of attacks over here. We've seen him do it before. 4 Go Again, a tall attack, Go Again. It was absolutely nutty. And just a PSA, if you put a 10-pound cam, did he take it? Oh, he's going down to 1. Huge gamble over here. DMArmada is going to go ahead and also, I think, take 1 perhaps from Was there a Frostbite that was left on the board? Perhaps not. Ultimately, the life total here, Michael Feng hanging on by a thread. DMArmada at 11, looking to close this out.
Insidious Chill ployed here. That's why Feng, I guess, wanted to keep extra cards in his hand, so he has to have the card itself, the blue to pay for it, and then a card to stick in his arsenal. But again, now a single poke from the Aether Ashwing is lethal. The arcane damage accompanying it from Burn Them All is lethal. Now Michael Feng's in a position where he has to trade one card per one Aether Ashwing attack. This Channel Lake Frigid is the only thing that can keep him afloat. And you said we're approaching the end game. And of all 9 billion realities, there are prohibitively few in which Michael Feng wins the game from this point. It is going to be extremely hard to fight out of this situation. He's being slowly choked by the smoke and singed by the flames here as Dromai brings her full power to bear.
Yeah, and if you put a ham in the oven at the beginning of this match, now's the time for you to apply a new glaze to it. As we're at that like 45 to 50-minute mark of the game, and ultimately, again, there's no timers on this, friends. We want to have a resolution to this match here. I believe the Euros call it a result. If that's is that true in football? Is it called
You're
a result?
asking Australian that, but yeah, sure.
Okay, so. Trying to think of something more Australian. When you huck a boomerang, you're looking for a result of a return of the boomerang. Is that correct?
You are grasping at straws, my friend.
Absolutely. Much like the koala bears grasp at straws in the trees in Australia, I too am grasping at said straws.
They grasp at the intoxicating eucalyptus leaves that get them nice and.
Oh, is that what it is? I'm not a koalologist, so I don't know.
I mean, you're asking like the whitest Australian possible about throwing a boomerang. Like I can't help you here, mate. Like I don't know what to tell you. I have never and will never, unironically or ironically, have to boomerang and try and throw it like I know what I'm doing. That is not going to happen. I mean, I'm wondering.
I want a video of you throwing a boomerang. That we'll get to that at one point. As
heavens.
Well, we're at a point here, frankly, where Michael Feng cannot make mistakes, and we might be at a point where you take the time that's given to you, in this case relatively unlimited, frankly. I mean, age, I think, and expiring is the only thing that might stop this match from reaching a
relentless march of years. Yes.
Yeah, the ever looming threat of old age, but you and I are getting there. But DMArmada and Michael Feng right now, DMArmada in a great spot. The Ashwings, like you mentioned.
You're doing it. Oh, that's gross.
Filthy, absolutely filthy. Now the reprieve here is that it's 2 instances of 1. So 1 pitch can deal with both of them. It's not that it's 2 arcane in one, not neat package. It's 1 and 1. And when you only have an arcane barrier 1, you can deal with it. So Michael Feng does have an opportunity here, and he's going to pitch the Heart of Fyendal to give him a little bit more breathing room.
Okay, is this fused? It is fused. Okay, this is definitely what Michael Feng had to do to try and, have some solid ground to stand on here. So pitch the Heart of Fyendal, great, gain on life. And now you have 2 instances of discard unless you pay 2. And then more if Feng wants to, pop that amulet here. Pretty big deal, though. And again, Armada is discarding for many of these. This is a pay 2 because he's pitching now at instant speed, of course, to the Flamescale Furnace, getting 2 resources. But he probably wants to hold those resources in hand because he needs to pay to attack with those dragons. He needs to pay to get the dragon to carry the 2 arcane damage from the Burn Them Alls here. So Armada says, okay, well, I don't need a hand. I'll fight my way through all of these triggers. Yeah, I'm going to take the damage as well from this Aether Ice Vein, and I'm still going to try and get you here.
Now, I'm curious here. Is there an opportunity, let's say, if you do pop the Ice Amulet? I'm completely ignorant on this, and I hope that somebody smarter than me can figure this out if possible. Maybe Uber, but you got 2 floating there. Let's say you do pop the Ice Amulet and it gives you the opportunity of discard or pay 2. If you have no cards in hand but 2 floating, can you say, I will just discard but not have a card and float the 2? Or are you obligated to pay the 2? I'm really curious in that.
No, I think you can choose to discard from an empty hand and you can keep the 2 floating.
Yeah, that might be why Michael Feng did not actually convert on the Ice Amulet there.
You're incentivized to empty your hand when you have an Aether Ice Vein. If you can act at instant speed, you see it in the mirror sometimes where players just try and empty their hand of cards and then say, I'll discard from an empty hand and keep these resources floating.
And then you just swing Dawnblade because that's all you do, right?
Not anymore. Apparently, you attack with barraging Brawnhide instead. Oh, the Dorinthia Discord is just they're off the group right now, trying to figure out how to deal with Icelander and Autumn. So I'll keep you posted, mate. It's quite a saga.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you just take a little glimpse into the Azalea Discord, and they're still, connecting the dots in the Illuminati to figure out what the hell they're missing for that.
What an aim counter is, right? That's what they're all trying to figure out.
What if an aim counter gives you 10 life? Yeah, maybe you'll have a chance then, perhaps. But as it stands right now, frankly, Armada is the one who's sort of, opened up the attack here. I think he's swinging with that one Aether Ashwing which in conjunction with those two Burn Them Alls, that's two instances of one Arcane. And if Michael Feng just, sort of waves the bill aside on that one, that's game. So he's going to have to address them. But do you address both? What's the deal here? Do you want to get rid of them? You know that you need cards as well to deal with the rest of the Aether Ashwings. You really have very little spot to maneuver here. The saving grace, like you mentioned earlier, is the fact that there's a Channel Lake Frigid on the board that is going to make it difficult for Armada to continue the attack. And those fused, those taxations, and Armada not having anything left.
For the card or his tunic. Sorry,
that works too. That definitely works too. So he's eating the Arcane with AB, floating one. We still have, I think, an Ashwing damage to resolve.
He takes it.
Takes it.
Here's the other one. Remember, Armada has to pay for these attacks, but now Feng has to give the tunic or a card. And if you're in Mike Feng's position, I mean, if you want to do your thing again, remind it, you need to keep a card for your arsenal. So pretty disincentivized. Yeah, got to offer the tunic up here. You need to maintain the card. You're not getting to 3 counters on that tunic again in this game. That's not going to happen.
Armada at 5. Michael Feng hanging on by a thread at 1. Honestly, a perfect recipe to survive that turn. It could have been real greasy otherwise.
Yeah.
But Michael Feng not only just surviving that turn, but surviving with a card. That can actually be huge. Yes. Because if DMArmada misplays here and Michael Feng is the right recipe, he might catch DMArmada flat-footed here with his pants down and really convert on a sneaky win. But there is absolutely zero margin for error.
That CLF, I think, should go. Yeah, Feng realizing that is no longer in play now because he has nothing in his pitch zone, and there will be a second flow counter gained by that there. Obviously, he poked DMArmada with a waning moon at the end of DMArmada's turn as well. So getting to stay alive and return 3 damage isn't too shabby at all. DMArmada not in a position to pitch to that onboard arcane barrier trove that he has. Feng still faces the same dilemma again now. So he pocketed that one card he saved, like you said, Flake. He draws up and he just looks across the table and says, righto, if you got it, you got it. Come at me.
Michael Feng, multiple, he's won Callings. He's won Battle Hardens. He's a pro tour player. DMArmada, his biggest struggle has been spending a weekend casting with me and keeping it on the rails. That has been his biggest struggle, but this might actually be the bigger challenge right now, is beating Michael Feng. DMArmada, a world-class player that you might not know about. I mean, you know who DMArmada is, but he's so tuned into entertainment, to education, to being a true ambassador of the game, that he's not out there necessarily playing the big tournaments and trying to qualify. That's not what he wants to do. What he's more interested in is here comes something nasty. It's Michael Feng now busting the nodes with an Emeritus Scolding.
So Emeritus Scolding, 4 damage if it comes on your opponent's turn. Metacarpus node says pay 1 to get extra damage. So this is now 5 damage on board. Before we get too carried away here, this is in response to the Rake the Embers play. And DMArmada is able to pitch to Arcane Barrier. Michael Feng is saying, I'm not going out without a fight. You're presenting lethal damage. I'm going to present lethal of my own. And Armada says, right, well, in response to your Metacarpus node, I am going to activate my Flamescale Furnace, pitching the Blaze headlong to get 2 resources. And don't forget, Arcane Barrier from Null Rune Gloves, plus 3 Aether Ashwings. Armada can defend himself from this damage, but this is a lot, because the Waning Moon now gets activated in response as well. And in theory, there's 4 damage from the Waning Moon, 5 from the Emeritus Scolding. Feng can present 9 damage with his Metacarpus node.
That's a lot of damage. Again, the Metacarpus node is not going to affect the Waning Moon, but it will affect the Emeritus Scolding.
Of course.
And that puts you up to 8. Still 8 filthy. Armada's going to drain the bank account there to absorb as much of the arcane damage as he just needs to survive. He found a blue. That is huge. The blue is coming in clutch.
Staying alive there, and you're right. Metacarpus not only buffing cards that have effects that deal arcane damage, so he takes 1 from that, goes to 4, and then he's able to eat up all of that Emeritus Scalding damage and go to only 2. That is huge. Michael Feng, without Stormstriders, by the way, is still able to make an explosive gambit towards the end of the game. And now DMArmada says, right, I'm pushing my pile of cards into the middle of the board here, and I'm going to get this done now, because any longer, and you might just have had me. What a match. What a ridiculous back and forth between these two players. Michael Feng, of course, calling Cincinnati champion, battle-hearted Minneapolis winner. DMArmada, of course, beloved content creator, but now we're seeing another side to this guy. He's a stone-cold killer out there when the playmats are down.
Oh, he is nasty, and you can see why. Again, it's not just about creativity, it's about execution, and DMArmada knows what the hell he is all about, and that is just taking names when necessary, just crushing it. He is incredible. DMArmada just killing it. Like you mentioned, that game seemed like it was all Armada, and you got to give a lot of credit to Michael Feng to make it that close and to make it that interesting. That Tobal tie really threw a wrench in the gears for what Michael Feng was hoping to pull off late game. If you had a Stormstriders in your pocket, that game could have been completely different. Tobal tie really just pulling the rug out from under Feng's feet there.
Yeah, again, and just to reiterate, it's a brutal matchup for the Icelander. It used to be a hell of a lot worse. Now it's bad, but you have a few more poppers to answer some of these key threats, but Femi gets resolved twice. So all of a sudden, that's a problem for Michael Feng. And then, of course, the Tonal tie, like you mentioned, requires so much of him, so much of a tempo loss for that Icelander player in order to try and contain the looming threat of having all of your equipment blown up. Genuinely, I know it's a long game, and some of our viewers who've stayed along with us for a while might be feeling fatigued from it, but really just a masterclass in how this matchup plays from both sides of the table. Really impressed with especially how like Flamescale Furnace was utilized very diligently by DMArmada to make sure that he's still able to maintain a decent amount of resources despite being interrupted, despite there being channel like Frigids. A lot of these disruptive cards coming down right in the middle of his turn from Michael Feng. And credit to Michael Feng, who, like you said, without Stormstriders, still able to present lethal on that final turn. And again, could have gone either way. Fortunately for Armada, there's a blue in hand and he has all that arcane barrier on board. But again, there are so many, I guess, branching realities that could have occurred in that matchup. Just so glad we got such a close finish between these two.
It was a great game altogether, and again, on DMArmada's side, it goes miles. I know that for people like yourself and myself, who are always in front of the camera, doing the content creation aspect of the game, a lot of people don't know that, we put a lot of work into practice and trying to play well, and to see somebody like DMArmada go through and, beating Red Zone Rogue, beating Michael Feng, it's a great, I'm very happy for the guy because he deserves it, definitely.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, of course, that is the first of our quarterfinal matchups done and dusted. DMArmada will be advancing, and he'll be playing against the winner of our next matchup. Coming right up, it's Tariq Patel on Fire, going up against the underdog champion Ethan Van Sant, who's already dealt with Pablo Pintor, now going up against a multiple nation national champion. It's going to be quite the challenge for him on Levy, but I know plenty of people are cheering for him, so stick around. We've got that barn burner of a match coming right up.
The Goliath Gauntlet is brought to you by FAB Cards, where reality and fantasy meet. Go to kfabecards.com for all your Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and Flesh and Blood needs. FAB Cards. Be who you want to be.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Goliath Gauntlet Flesh and Blood Invitational presented by FAB Cards. I'm Mitch Leslie here, joined by Matt DeMarco. We just got off the back of a ridiculous, a marathon matchup between Michael Feng and DMArmada. And like this next head-to-head also promises to impress.
Well, I think that this one's going to be slightly quicker if you were to, I mean, let's be real there. We all went through the marathon that we saw there, but again, masterfully played by both players. But two other just titans of the game are going to be going up, and they are not going to be pulling any punches in this matchup.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Of course, Tariq Patel's first matchup was a Dromai game for him, and as Fi felt pretty good. He's really able to control the board and have this crazy kind of tempo that was very, very hard for Tyler Horsball to keep up with. On the other side, I think one of our most exciting underdog stories from the Goliath Gauntlet so far definitely came from the matchup between Pablo Pintor and Tariq's opponent today, Ethan Van Sant, of course, bringing the Levia in, having some unbelievable turns against the Viserai play of Pablo, which was very conservative and very clever in that mid-game. Pablo often just sort of pitching to create a rune charm and coming in for like 1 and 2, despite blocking with his entire hand against this relentless onslaught. But sometimes when you discard 2 Beast Withins during the space of 1 game as Levia, you can just do some pretty disgusting things. This kind of matchup, though, very quickly, there are only 20 cards, I think, on Ethan Van Sant's side of the field that can actually deal with, can block at all. So that's probably a little bit scary going up against the Fire, who, like, I can imagine Tariq's not going to be inclined to offer too many cards up to block these big, bustling brute attacks.
I don't think either of these players really give a hoot. Frankly, the most important metric on the card is going to be attack when you're looking at Ethan Van Sant's side of the board. And frankly, is that a 6? Great, we're sitting pretty. I don't need to block because my goal here is to do what I did in the other round, which was just high roll a lot of stuff and get really greasy with some of these discards, and hopefully we can outpace the Fi. This is a race in its truest form, as Ethan Van Sant, I suspect, is just going to go balls to the walls and start flinging rocks.
All right, let's now jump in and have a look at these deck lists. So let's talk about Ethan Van Sant's deck. Now, he's a very humble guy, and he knows what some of the drawbacks of Levia are, and he was pretty, on his stream, pretty vocal about the fact that, maybe he's not favored in many of these matchups, but he understands his deck well enough to get the edge. He also played a few games up against Fire as practice, and we got some insight from him there, so thanks, Ethan, for that. You can find him at Mansant on YouTube. Let's talk the deck list here. The first thing that really stands out to me, Flake, there are 20 cards that do not block in this list.
Why do you need to block? You're going up against a ninja, and a ninja's going to have a whole bunch of nonsense they're sending your way either way. The whole gambit here is that with a little flick of the wrist and a dice roll, you should be able to outpace your opponent. Obviously, Levi's got that ticking time bomb of blood debt, but you're right. Blocking is not the metric on the card that we're really going to be in the spotlight here. In the crosshairs, frankly, are those big fat 6s and those, producible go-agains. Again, it's going to take a little pizzazz, a little sleight of hand, so to speak, to kind of get those 6s, those discards down pat and proper. But ultimately, what Ethan is kind of leaning on with this deck here is that you are going to outpace whatever aggression that the ninja's going to send your way. On hits be damned, I'm just going to outmuscle you.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a few sort of lines for Levia that look pretty strong. They usually involve opening up with like a go-again attack, right? Cards like Dread Screamer are a great way for Ethan to open his turn if he wants to go a little bit wider, and Wild Ride can also offer the same thing. But if the action points aren't there, or maybe he's been using cards to block, then cards like Endless Maw are so crucial to Levia's strategy. Not only is it a pretty hefty attack, right, if he's only going to make 1 in a turn, but being able to banish 3 cards from the graveyard, have 3 chances of turning off that blood debt, and then following it up with a big attack is pretty important. Again, those non-blocking cards are of some concern because you do get redundancy in some of these Levia hands. Sometimes you just can't do all the things. A lot of the time, brutes have a couple of extra cards left over. So Ethan either wants to be able to attack with these non-blockers or find a way to get them into his graveyard so they can be used as fodder to turn off that blood debt. Let's look across the table, though, at Fi's game plan, which is a little bit more straightforward, sometimes being maybe accused of being somewhat linear here. We saw Tariq turn up against Tyler Horsball with this deck and look very effective at shutting down that Dromai list. It's a pretty classic Fi look, and one card you pointed out I think last time was seeing Soulbead Strike make its way sort of back into some of these lists. This one doesn't have that, but of course a little Minuism package is still going to be present.
Well, the Soulbeat Strike is being those Kadachi fuels, as it were, as they were very prominent in Katsu lists. In this case, what you're basically doing is you're kind of changing the Soulbeat Strike for something like Blue Snatch. So Snatch in here, again, just continuously, widening or lengthening rather the runway that you're giving a FI disc to really take flight and go as wide as possible. Cards like the Blue Snatcher, which are kind of making their way in, only one Salted Wound to sort of close the deal if necessary, but some old favorites that are kind of winging their way back into this deck list, such as Red Razor Reflex, which were a staple for Ninja decks. But even further than that, we're digging deep when we're pulling out Lunging Press. That's a card that, again, can pitch for fuel if necessary, but also just go over the top for some of these cards that may have on-hit effects that are necessary, especially when you're running Mask of Momentum.
Definitely. And don't forget that Blue Snatch you pointed out, that can benefit from Tiger Stripe Shuko's buffing effect, as it's a card that has 2 or less base power. And we've seen Tariq turn those Blue Snatches into red ones via various pump effects on like an Art of War turn, for example. So the stage is set, ladies and gentlemen, here in our final court or final match. Of course, the winner of this game will advance to take on DMArmada, who we know advanced against Michael Feng. So let's jump into the game without further ado. It's Levia going up against FAB.
Both players are going to be really leaning into their aggressive tactics as blocking is not on the menu. Tariq Patel going as wide as possible. Ethan Van Sant going probably as tall and smashy as possible. We're starting with a pulping here as Ethan Van Sant is on the play, going to go just get things rolling, and throwing out a pulping to begin with is not a bad start. That's a pretty hefty attack.
That's right. So we are drawing a card and then discarding a random card. And if a card with 6 or more power is discarded, this pulping comes in with Dominate, which is fantastic on turn 0. Obviously, presenting a Dominate attack that your opponent can't fully block out unless they dare to use equipment would be very nice for Ethan to leak some free damage here. We'll just roll a dice on these 3. This is the best way to sort of randomly make those selections. We're going to see this a lot here with this Levia deck, as there will be a lot of random banishes and discards.
Oh, boy.
Beast Within gets discarded. Okay.
Yeah, and another one off the top. Let's go. So a Beast Within is pulled off the top. It's discarded again. This is a situation where Ethan Van Sant is talking about little percentage points. And, he may look Levia. He may make it look like Levia is just easy to play. It's plug and play. But that's not the case at all, especially when you're not necessarily banishing or discarding the proper way. But Ethan Van Sant has made this look easy. He's made it look like it's a sure thing every time. And Tariq Patel still on the hook for 6 here.
Yeah, and again, keeping that Beast Within in Ethan's hand as, future potential discard fodder is huge. Again, more opportunities to rip extra cards off the top, but instead, it's going to be followed up by a swing big. This is some turn 0 action that Tariq Patel would sooner want to forget. There were no blocks on that pulping here, and so the follow-up is going to come in hard. Remember, when pulping is defended by less than 2 non-equipment cards, it gains go again. Such a wide turn. Tariq says, I'm taking it all.
Yeah, Tariq just signing for the bill because he's got work to do himself over here, as the Ninja player has tools of his own. And the beautiful part about this deck here for Tariq is running the Mask of Momentum. If Ethan Van Sant wants to sit back and just let it happen, there's going to be some taxation on top of it. You're giving Tariq Patel a runway here to go ahead and not just deal damage, but also draw cards, as Mask of Momentum is a constant threat. Now, the beautiful part here is that there's a lot of equipment for Ethan to use here to break up those chains, but Tariq's starting in an impressive way with an Art of War.
Yeah, okay, so this is a huge way to start to make up that life deficit. He took 14 damage on turn 0, and he needs to make up that difference as quickly as possible. Remember, Levia has some cards that don't block. Maybe there is redundancy here, and Ethan Van Sant's also trying to think, okay, I need to use my Carrion Husk as effectively as possible in this game. And it's more likely that he wants to use it to, eat up a large sort of attack at the end of a chain, like a Lava Burst, for example, Assault the Wound, anything that gets sort of pumped as a result of a long chain. Having that 6 free health, it's essentially healing for 6 if you can line it up against a 6 attack, is such a big deal. But for now, we talk about Tariq, we talk about him starting to kick off here. This is a mounting anger coming off that Art of War.
That's a 4 go again, a nice start, but it's going to get a little buff. So it's a 5 go again towards Ethan, and you're going to see this discrepancy in the life totals just evaporate really quickly as Ethan, 2 big swings that Tariq just took off the chin, but he's back at it over here. And it's going to be a lot of quick jabs and pokes, but off the back of an Art of War turn, it really does compound. So Tariq is going to try to do his best to really squeeze out as much value out of the Art of War as possible. Ethan Van Sant also running 3 Art of Wars, but in that case, Art of War is not going to get, not getting as much value. But here's that's a lot of equipment being tossed towards Tariq's way here to try to block out this mounting anger.
And it is going to block it out. We have an Iron Rot Gauntlet, Crown of Providence, and the Scabskin Scalers, all put in front of this attack. When you see an equipment block like this so early, it means that the player has some heat in the hand. I'm looking forward to see how that plays out, but for now, it's a Flame Call Awakening from Tariq's side, which means that if you've played another red attack card this turn, which he has, a red card rather, he can search his deck for a Phoenix Flame, reveal it, and put it into his hand, and then he'll give it a little bit of a shuffle.
I love this. And cards like Flame Call Awakening, anything that allows you to draw, it's kind of like a belittle in that regard. Just you sort of satisfy the criteria of playing a red card already, which is already done. Go ahead, find yourself another attack. It's just go ahead and completely, just draw this out, as he's going to be playing right now an E-Strike for 6. Pocketing a card. The question is it a draw off the top? I feel like he just went ahead and just peeled a card to, or was it go again? That's the other question here. I'm wondering what he's decided to do. I think he drew a card, because Snapdragon Scalers is going to be snapped at as the attack reaction. That now has go again.
So already a 15 damage turn presented by Tariq Patel. Remember, he draws off Art of War, drawing off that Enlightened Strike as well. And again, threatening a trigger from the Mask, again, if this comes in unblocked here by Ethan. So a lot of action going on for Tariq. He gets the go again, spending his Snapdragon Scalers here. And some people think, man, this is quite early in the game to use this key piece of equipment. But for Tariq, it's an essential part of sort of lengthening this combat chain and presenting more damage. And look at how he's made this life depth setup, albeit because Ethan hasn't blocked it all from his hand.
There's the lunging press. That is a one of that has been pitched away, so Ethan doesn't have to worry about that +1 coming around the corner at some point. But I believe the mounting anger was full blocked, so there is no threat from the Mask just yet. But this is threatening Mask right here. More just potency in terms of tossing continuous amounts of danger towards Ethan Van Sant. Spreading Flames is what is on the menu here, and that is going to be a 4 attack again. Those nasty breakpoints, and since most of the equipment is already committed to that first mounting anger, Ethan is going to have to either give up cards or finally toss that Carrion Husk into the ring.
Again, so the calculus of what Ethan's next turn is supposed to look like is probably being altered a little bit here. Spreading Flames, of course, being buffed up by that Art of War. And again, an insane turn. Let me count. 5, 4 plus 6 there. 15. I mean, insane. 19 damage here being sort of thrown Ethan's way. And yeah, now it's a matter of saying, okay, what do our blocks look like? He's considering putting that Carrion Husk in the way already. Remember, Carrion Husk carries Blood Debt itself. So it will be adding to the tally that Ethan is trying to avoid taking damage from, as he will hope to banish a 6 power card next turn to turn off Blood Debt. That's one of the fallibilities that Levia has.
Talk about wearing the fridge. If that is the industrial freezer right there that you're just bringing, the whole Maytag crew has to come out and carry that massive piece of equipment. The Carrion Husk is going to just absorb the damage that was being presented by Spreading Flames, and ultimately just also shutting off any potential for a Mask of Momentum. But the story is still onward here, as the Ember Blade and the Phoenix Flame. So look at that. Tariq Patel went wide off the back of an Art of War, and Ethan Van Sant here has been very coveting of the cards he has in hand. So how big is this clapback going to be, Uber? I think it's going to be pretty spectacular.
I mean, yeah. Okay, so starting off with a Blood Rush Belly here. Great way to begin the turn, of course. Discarding a random card here. All of his brute attacks getting +2 this turn. And if it's a 6 or more power card discarded, Ethan gets to draw 2 cards, and it will go again. So what is in the hand here?
That's a 6. That's gone.
That'll do it.
And again, good players that play off of these random quote-unquote effects will tailor their hand and pitch appropriately in order to really get these guarantees. Is drawing, pitching a 6 off or discarding a 6 off of Blood Rush Bellows is what you want to do. You do not want to end that turn off of a random element. So playing it safely, there's no way he would have absorbed that much damage off of Tariq unless he had a quote-unquote sure thing. So here's the first attack. That is a Mandible Claw. And again, Blood Rush Bellow is going to go ahead and just improve all of your brute attacks, whether they are attack actions or whether they're just standard fare, your weapons, your built-in attacks here, as your brute attacks in general are +2. So each of those Mandible Claws are coming in for a swipe of 5.
Yeah, also important is that, a lot of Ethan's larger attack action cards don't have go again. So opening up with the Mandible Claws that are guaranteed go again, because Ethan has discarded a card with 6 or more power, is a great way to go. And it's a great way to guarantee a potentially very, very big turn here. And we're waiting on, obviously, Tariq to decide how to go about blocking this turn. He has to ask himself, okay, to what degree is my opponent able to keep up with my damage output? This is actually something that Ethan was musing about a lot on his own testing streams. I have to sort of tech this deck to be able to keep up with Fi, to quote him directly. So obviously Ethan is going to be able to make at least three attacks this turn. The likelihood of, out of 2 cards at an arsenal, that he sort of can pay for the next Mandible Claw, have a go again attack and another one, I'm not sure how likely that is, but either way, 5 comes crashing in. Tariq's starting to find himself on the pointy end of those claws.
And that's perfectly fine by him, I think. And we're talking earlier on about the utilization of your equipment, and depends on the matchup. Oftentimes, you really want to covet that equipment and really use it when it matters. But both players know that the on-hand effects of both players are not necessarily terrible. Obviously, the Mask of Momentum is constantly there haunting Ethan, but ultimately, using the Snapdragon Scalers may seem like, wow, it's you're nowhere near lethal. Usually, you save the Scalers when you're pressuring lethal and you're able to sort of continue the momentum. But I think Tariq's main objective here was, frankly, just to use them while you can, because both players know that they are not long for this world. This game is going to be over in a heartbeat, especially when you go claw into holy Moses. That is a big attack.
Yeah, swing big for 10. If it doesn't hit, obviously, the defending player can create a quicken token. Something Fi generally doesn't really have much need of. Also, the likelihood of Tariq blocking 10 here is astronomically low. So just read this as a 2 for 10 right now, which is ridiculous. A 20 damage turn here from Ethan Van Sant. Decidedly impactful is that Blood Rush Bellow really allows him to get rolling. And of course, Blood Debt's turned off.
No, you gotta cash in an ass load of air miles to get that kind of discount on a 10 attack. Let's be real here. 10 for 2. That's
is Blood Debt turned off? I don't think he's banished anything from his graveyard this turn.
He has not, but there's not much Blood Debt that's kind of lurking around, as far as I know. I think there's obviously, he's got the Carrion Husk that's going around here, but I think that Ethan Van Sant is completely happy here to present a situation where you put your opponent into a position where they will eventually need to block. And if you're taking 1 or 2 on these off turns, that's okay. It's when the Blood Debt is essentially presenting lethal. When you're your own worst enemy, when you're the snake eating its own tail, that's when you need to be a little bit more weary of how you block and how you banish. But at this juncture, I think Ethan Van Sant understands that this game is going to be a race, and you don't even tie your shoes. You just slam them on and you just run.
And obviously, as the Brute player hopes not to trip themselves up on the laces, because the Graveling Growl was discarded, obviously, off the Blood Rush Bellow. Plus, there's the Husk. Obviously, we don't have Ethan Van Sant's full graveyard available to us, but we'll know if he doesn't turn off Blood Debt. We'll see how many life he ticks down at the end of the turn. Tariq's still musing over how to deal with this very large swing. Barry Bonds-esque coming across the table here. And this would account for a considerable portion of his life. And Tariq, then, if he takes it all, he has to hope to be able to basically blow Ethan up next turn, unless Levia makes a stumble, as sometimes the Brutes can do. Not exactly twinkle toes on the right-hand side here.
Yeah, no asterisks, however, on this swing big. It is legitimate, and it is real, and it is spectacular. As a 10 attack off the back of that Blood Rush Bellow, again, he said, Ethan basically saying, hey, that's a really cool Art of War. Yeah, you went wide, like 6 or 7 chain links. I'm all for it. Congratulations. Sounds good. How about a Blood Rush Bellow? And then a whole lot of shaking going on. His 20 is being presented towards Tariq over here. And again, in a race scenario, sure, Tariq's got a whole bunch of blocks still at his disposal, but a lot of that stuff, like the Mask of Momentum, you do not give that up until it is absolutely necessary. It's the last piece that you jettison off the plane when you're trying to attain liftoff. But in this case, Tariq is really mulling over this, because I think at this juncture, Tariq is saying, if I go down to 10, do I have enough to put Ethan in a position where he might donate cards, or is he just gonna, swallow what I send him and come back with another, massive amount of just sustained big attacks? And Tariq also has to keep in mind that if Ethan just draws poorly, that is also an out here. So Tariq is taking his time. And again, in a matchup like this that goes super quick, that you have all kinds of clock to burn to sort of, figure out your blocking, do your taxes, write out your grocery list. You got time.
Tariq intends to make use of it as much as possible. I have a friend who I play against in armories quite often. He always likes to use the bathroom before the game. And I never interrupt him because he's always on like Briar or something like that. And I'm sat there playing Dory and I'm like, oh, you know what? You could take a Titanic dump and we would still have time to play this game. It's going to be a race no matter what. So I put my feet up and wait for him to come to the table and yeah, no questions asked, no worries.
I
Tariq
feel that
here.
though. I feel that absolutely. I have the nervous peas all the time before casting and before playing a match. I need to the last thing I do before sitting down for a match is I have to pee. Well, I wash my hands. That's the last thing before I sit down. But ultimately, if I'm not there, forget it. It is just gonna, ruin me.
Flame scale furnace being offered as a blocking piece here. So that's going to eat up 2, just a paltry 2. And remember, Tariq comes into this turn without an arsenal card. Meaning that obviously Fire only has those 4. Tariq takes the vast majority of that damage in order to make the very best use of these 4 cards that he has. It is a significant life deficit that he is eyeing down right now. And if he doesn't really stick the landing on this turn, then it's actually his destiny may not be in his hands. It might be up to whatever Ethan ends up picking up off the top of his deck. His previous game, he mentions that it was pretty strong variance-wise. Maybe referred to as a high roll by his opponent Pablo, as he managed to discard 2 Beast Withins and just go absolutely wild. That is definitely the upside of what Brute can offer you, but there's always the element, like we've kind of explained in many different sort of analogies in this matchup already, that is a double-edged sword.
Using the flame scale furnace there, people might think like, why are you just blocking 2? Like, who cares at that rate? You take the extra 2, you can have your flame scale furnace. I think Tariq right now is understanding that, hey, just like Tinder, it's a game of inches. You got to get your get the value where you can. You shove that flame scale furnace now for the 2. Maybe next time, that you won't have an opportunity to use 2 of the furnace ticks, because the game is vastly, or rather rapidly approaching a conclusion here, as both players have really swung for the fences on both sides. And we're going to be pitching here, and there we go. There's the first I think that's Spreading Flames, if I'm not mistaken. That's going to open up the turn. Draconic attacks you control have +1, while their base is less than the number of draconic chain links you control. So 3 go again is opening salvo here for Tariq, which is not necessarily that scary, especially for someone like Ethan, who, started this turn at a pretty healthy lead.
That was the Singleton Salt the Wound pitched by Tariq there. Is with the 4-card hand, he's not really guaranteed a long enough combat chain to get real value out of that card. And hey, in a pinch, it's a yellow, so it's decent pitch fodder. And Tariq saying, watching Ethan sort of take this damage, obviously always a little bit intimidating when your opponent is, looks unincentivized to present any blocks to you. And at a life total of 8, Tariq definitely has to puzzle out how he can pressure Ethan into giving up some of those cards and lessening the crackback that may come across the table. Searing Emberblade here, very common choice for your second attack, as it being the second Draconic Chain Link will have Go Again built in, coming in for 3. But again, it's expensive.
I like this. I like this play, and I'll tell you why. Tariq here is just kind of trying to make chicken salad out of chicken shit, as it were. That might be the first bleep ever on the Goliath Gauntlet. But ultimately here, what he's trying to do here is present rather unassuming attacks that, are actually scaling up pretty nicely off the back of things like Shuko, off the backs of Spreading Flames. But look what he's managed to actually cobble together off of an unassuming hand, pitching away things like Salt the Wound, etc. You thinking that the turn is actually going to be pretty paltry. But ultimately what's going on here is he's just saying, all right, it's just 3. It's just 3. It's just a bit. You've got a lot of life. Give it to me, and he might be giving away an arsenal here, but ultimately he still has an equipment pool ready to go, but he does have these massive attacks starting with a 6.
Yeah, I mean, that was crazy. The Shuko buffing up the lava burst there as well was pretty cute. I also enjoyed that. Here comes Ethan. Again, presenting a pretty large attack to get this turn sort of started off. And again, really important that he's able to keep that blood debt turned off. And this is his graveyard here. Are we randomly banishing from?
So right now, what is presented on his side, is, if I'm not mistaken, just taking a look here, is what the hell card is that? As you might be asking, as frankly we're all asking, is what card is that being played? Because when you're looking at things like Levia cards, sometimes you got to go back into.
Is that a Boneyard Marauder? I think just maybe alternate art.
It's possible. It's completely possible. It looks perhaps like a Boneyard Marauder. Maybe I'm incorrect here, but yeah, you got to banish 3 random cards, so it looks like that's what's going on.
It's the promo Boneyard Marauder. Excuse me. So yeah, banishing 3 random cards from his graveyard. It has Blood Debt, obviously, and it comes in for 6.
The good old promo yard Marauder. Wonderful here. Again, Ethan's deck is just a thing of beauty. It is altered. It is signed. It is blingy. That's the kind of thing where I think if Ethan ever won a calling with this Levia deck, he could probably just package that up and put it on eBay for like 10 Gs and say, here's my whole Levia list that won the calling. It's up for grabs. I want a Hyundai. That's what he's going to say.
All
Down
right.
to 2. Man, Tariq is just, playing it again. Game of inches. Here we go. He's going to start it up with another Mounting Anger. And this is where the game gets nitty and gets gritty, where Ethan Van Sant is going to be wishing he had all his equipment that he does not have anymore. And the fact that there's still a Mask of Momentum on the table, Tariq Patel has really walked himself to the edge, but he hasn't, fallen over yet. He just wants a better view. And we're starting with 4 go again.
Again, not a terrible position to be in, Tariq. Again, still not able to Arsenal a card in that previous turn. Really just throwing them out there as they come in. Another attack that Ethan is fairly happy to take here, which is, I'll admit, a little surprising at this stage. Only able to present 6 in that last turn here. Definitely a quieter outing for Levia. Maybe a bit of a trip up in terms of that tempo. Tariq is in a position to lay it on thick.
Showing the brand with Cinderclaw that he's going to be banishing and replaying, again, based off of Mounting Anger. Banish a card with cost less than the amount of chain links. If you do, you can play it, and it gets +1 attack. So that brand with Cinderclaw, which was a 3 go again, is now a 4 go again, and the breakpoints are the magic word here. But again, Ethan Van Sant, as you mentioned earlier, Uber, a lot of those cards just either decided to say, you know what, we're not even going to print anything in the defense value because that's not what we do.
Yeah, not necessary in some cases. So that's a block there, the last block with the Scabsin Scalers plus the Dread Screamer out of hand. It's going to eat up that damage, but the Searing Emberblade, consistent as ever, going to be coming across, and Ethan's taking that. He's gone to 2 here. Phoenix Flame now?
Phoenix Flame. It's coming in for just 1. But keep in mind, there are some nasty stuff here. But again, he's going to go down to 1, and another Phoenix Flame with the Shuko on top is going to be 2.
Oh, Ethan has to give up cards here. Considering what his options are for this next turn, clearly feels like he needs to maintain a sizable hand, perhaps cards with discard effects, that require that additional cost to be paid. Rouse the Ancients being thrown in there to block. Oh, good Lord. He's at 1 life here. Ethan, again, really needs to make sure Blood Debt is turned off. In this next turn, and he needs to pressure Tariq in a big way.
That's what I'm saying. When you're basically you're just stuffing your pockets with dynamite, and if you start smoking that cigarette to celebrate the victory, one of those little embers falls in your pocket. It is kablamo. So he needs to banish some 6s here, and he needs to finish this game out. And Tariq Patel is still leaning on a lot of equipment here. So Tariq has been incredibly patient. Talking back to where he just took that massive damage. Here he is with the advantage of tempo and the advantage of all his equipment, or all of his blocking equipment.
Okay, 3 cards getting banished from the graveyard here. Decent chance that Ethan is able to banish a 6 or more power card. Obviously, that is absolutely required here. So randomly selecting those based on the number rolled in the dice. Hungering Slaughter Beast yellow, for those that are wondering. So it does present that 6 damage. Let's see.
There's the 6. So Blood Debt is turned off. That is a safety net over there for Ethan Van Sant. And the best possible thing that could have happened here is you're banishing 2 non-6s and a 6. Just keep the health of the variance in that discard pile as in your favor as possible. But ultimately here, Tariq is still on the hook for 6. It's not just a 1 where anything that leaks through is lethal. Tariq still has a little bit to play with, not to mention that Mask of Momentum is completely expendable now, because if you're hitting a 3rd time, you've already won 2 times over. So it does not matter.
He's got 4 block on deck between those 2 equipment pieces. This is just a perfect position for Tariq to be in here. And Ethan was wanting to set up for a Blood Rush Bellow turn. He didn't want to have to block with extra cards because obviously Blood Rush Bellow requires you to discard one. It's a part of the cost. But if his hand gets too sparse, then you see what happens here. He's forced to pitch the Blood Rush Bellow instead of, using that and pitching something else to it and then having the extra card to discard. So Tariq forcing just the right number of cards out of Ethan's hand to turn off what would be a disgusting turn from the man himself. And yeah, here we go. 5 block here between these 3 pieces of equipment. And bear in mind, yes, Mask of Momentum will break the first time it blocks. It has Blade Break. So does Tiger Stripe Shuko. But Tariq doesn't care. Like you said, Flake, they're expendable. He takes 1 damage from this turn and comes back with a full grip. This is so scary for Ethan.
It's so scary for Ethan because the other part about this, we might talk about how Tariq doesn't have an arsenal. So if you block creatively and appropriately, it's no problem. But keep in mind that you always have that floating Phoenix Flame that essentially gets the job done. That Phoenix Flame might close it out, and getting it a bit little and showing a mounting anger here. Is that a spreading flames or
Rising Resentment?
Rising Resentment. They all look the same. They're all red and fiery.
A ninja surrounded by a peel of flame.
Correct. And we're going to go ahead, fetch the one of the 2 blue Minnowisms in the list. And again, those aren't necessarily there perhaps to beef up the attacks. They're there for fuel to power the rest of your turn. And in Limited, we talk about this a lot. Uber, I always say about how some of the advantage of Phi is just the fact that you have an unconditional 3 attack with the Ember Blade. And we're going to take advantage over here. And we're going to continue this through. Ethan Van Sant has to have just the right recipe, the correct antidote for what Tariq is presenting here.
Well, he needs to hope that also all the cards in his hand block. Remember, unsideboarded, there's 20 of them that do not block. Remember, Art of War doesn't block. That's definitely a card that you're going to keep in your deck, no doubt about it. So it's another 3. Remember, as Ethan starts to run out of cards, he needs a pitch card for whatever's in his arsenal to force anything out of Tariq's hand here. So needs to ideally keep 1 card, but he's at 1 life. He does not have that luxury. There's an Ember Blade here, there's a card in hand, there's a pitch floating, and there's a chance for a Phoenix Flame to make an appearance. I don't think Ethan has any block left on his equipment. We'll find out in a second, but that's 3 cards from hand already. And now we're past the point of no return. Ethan puts 1 more card in front of a block. His next turn is blanked. Oh, and it's a lightning strike.
Why not? Let's show 7. We're going to go do nothing. Here.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, an insane matchup, and it ends up going really quite close. Tariq Patel showing that he's no coward, hardly blocking at all. There's like 0 cards coming out from his hand to block, and just ignores the prospect of Reckless Swing presenting lethal against him for 2 turns of this game. But at the end of the day, Tariq does the Phi thing well in saying, I'm not going to block unless I absolutely have to.
Well, frankly, at the end of the day, it's also a wise man by the name of Nathan Zamora once told me that if that 1 is infinitely times greater than 0, and frankly, that's all you need. You need just a dollar in your pocket, and you can really just get to the finish line there. As like you mentioned, Tariq has been on the big stage and has been in those situations. Frankly, I believe it was the U.S. National Championships again against Tyler Horspool in 2021, where he went down to 1 strategically so actually and said, screw it. I just need 1 to win. And that's where he ended the game. And I'm telling you, again, you need nerves of steel when the big attacks are being flung back and forth. You just got to really buckle down and play the odds and say you have it or you don't, but I'm going to win if you don't.
It is open deck list for this round onwards, so Tariq's aware there's only 1 Reckless Swing sitting in Ethan Van Sant's deck, and he was willing to take that chance over those 2 turns. And I feel like on the other side, fantastic play from Ethan. It's been such a pleasure to see him in this tournament. And I think we got to see the best and maybe the worst of Levia in some cases, because he opens up this game with some incredible damage, like these fantastic, go again, big attacks, swing bigs getting involved there. And it's just gas until he draws a red hand, and it's nothing but that, I think the Boneyard Marauder, that's all he can present, just that 6 damage, and all of a sudden, the tempo completely fizzles out for the Levia player. Trying to climb back into the game, and then having nothing but a pulping in hand on that last turn. Yeah, you won't be able to block out the full, Enlightened Strike damage either way. But again, showing some of the fallibility that Brute tends to have. Nonetheless, incredible matchup, and again, now we have these first 2 quarterfinals decided. That means that we have DMArmada going up against Tariq Patel in one of our semi-final games. Again, Tariq gets another 5 versus Dromai matchup. Flake, I mean, that seems pretty good for Tariq. He's handled Horseball well, but I've got to say, DMArmada has staved off all challenges really effectively in this run as well.
Well, when you're a dragon, it's really tough to stay in the air when your wings are on fire, as the Phoenix Flames are out there to essentially devour a lot of the, those wonderful dragons there that are going to be existing. And not only that, dragons don't have Spectra. They just eat damage, and that feeds into your Mask of Momentum as well. So it's all systems go here for Tariq Patel, and just kind of deciding how you want to parse out some of that damage and making sure that you're the most efficient possible at cleaning out the dragons, but also presenting damage to the player. That is what Ninja wants to do, because if you're too obsessed with cleaning out dragons, you are no longer attacking the life total, and longer the game goes, the more opportunities DMArmada will have to essentially start amassing a bigger board state. But again, that's a match that is going to be left up to those two players to decide, as they both very worthy semi-finalists.
Now, of course, we still have 2 quarterfinal matches left to play. Schedules are going to be a little bit changed this weekend. This is it for the Goliath Gauntlet for this weekend. We're going to be coming back on Wednesday, the 26th, for Matt Rogers versus Michael Hamilton, and then Isaac Crute versus Margin Bay in our final 2 quarterfinal matches. So keep your eyes peeled out for that announcement throughout the week, and come and join us again on Wednesday for more of the Goliath Gauntlet Flesh and Blood Invitational presented by FAB Cards. And in the meantime, everybody, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again soon.